Virgo. Hello everyone, how are you all doing? Hello. Hello. How are we all doing? Alright. So, I need to say hello to everyone. Hello. Thank you, Jack Ray. Gifting memberships. Thank you. Mega Scroll, hello. Vision, hello. Peter Dawson. Steve Clarke, hello. John Shea, hello. Alzeski, thank you. So this is a sci-fi Bruships. To an extent, it's more a... It's to an extent partially a sci-fi Bruships, partially it's a torturing one of my friend's Bruships, because we all know, well, some of us will though, Glyn has produced a new book. And, yeah. Well, look at it. I think this is worthwhile us talking about on this channel. I can't think of a book which we should talk about more on this channel as a sci-fi / naval history / procurement / logistics, all these things for a channel. So, yes, I'm going to be talking about this book. And please note, as always, this is a Kindle book, so I have it on my phone. So if I'm picking up, and if someone turns up in this video later and they see me reading from my phone, I'm not being rude. Someone commented that a little while back, and I was sort of going, it wasn't me being rude, it was me reading the book. I should probably have Kindle for PC set up so I could have a huge screen of it, but I don't. And hello Megastrow, hello Steve Clarke, Babylon 5 questions Alex, that's usually I send those to Jamie. That's where I send my Babylon 5 questions to Jamie. Hello Amelia. It's very difficult to work out what countries could do to punish America over the Vietnam War. What countries would want to do to punish America over the Vietnam War? Remember, in the nicest way, whilst countries might not agree with what America's doing in the Vietnam War, most of the countries which could actually do anything about it are either in a nuclear standoff with America, or are, and already they're not trading with them really, or are allied with America and depending on America for their security against that standoff. Or in the case of France, really, really hate the Viet Cong. Really, really hate the Viet Cong. Hello, Yickers. 4B Wellington, hello. Yes. Mark Harness, just plugged your channel to a bunch of Naval anime fans. They're eccentric but good people, and told them a bet of baked goods was on the line. There is. It's a very important bet, and it's one which, if my mum wins, is good for me, apparently, and I'm being told now. It's good for me in that not only do I not have this bet come up again, I get to do other things as well. Hello Glenn, glad you're here. Hello Stafford, thank you. I've got admins, I've got Dan, Glyn. I'm not sure if Glyn, I'm not sure if I should remove your admin privileges for this video, because, you know, you might start taking down people who are just commenting badly on your book. I doubt you would. You're far too nice a guy. Far too nice. Why were the British so slow to adopt the monoplane for Battleship-borne gunnery spotting aircraft? Because what was the race? You want a monoplane for saying you have a monoplane. That's great, but the biplane has greater lift. It just takes off just as easily, does the job just as well. Why do you have to go for a monoplane? It's faster, yes, but is speed a particular criteria for a battleship spotting aircraft? It's a criteria if you're turning into a reconnaissance aircraft, but it's not a criteria if you're turning into a battleship spotter aircraft. What's it using its speed for? To do faster figure of eights in the sky? Hello, Freeman. Hello, Yickers. Bishop and I here, typing. Hello, Brian Newman. I don't have a fluffy research assistant with me at the moment because it's snowing outside, and the fluffy research assistants have both decided that they are hiding. Hello Stafford, hello Coleman, hello DG40, hello Jangnath, hello Ruhon, hello Mike Calvero, Oh, I'm glad it's the high point of your day. That's nice. Hello, Andreas Gallardo Garcia. Hello. Good Lord, Bishon, you have the day off. Well, that's good, because I've been looking at videos of you and me today, so in the nicest way, that was coming up. I was considering whether or not to add that to this video or to the Hider video. I think I might add that video to the Hider video, which is, of course, Christmas Day's video. Is that a new emoji? There are a few new emojis. I'm not sure if they've uploaded though yet, because I've been writing them, but I've been also... Today, I have to admit, has been mostly a day of editing a video for tomorrow, and I've just decided to completely re-edit it and re-record some bits after we finish tonight's live. So, yes, tonight's live will be finishing at 11 o'clock. No, 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. Sorry, it'll be 3 hours long. It'll be 3 hours long, so I can get the rest of the stuff done by 11. And then leave my computer building and compiling the video, so I can upload it, and hopefully YouTube will be happy with it and let it go live tomorrow. And I know I shouldn't run it this late, but I had a script and I've changed my mind on it. Hello, Santa Canary. Listen, you do realise you're in the enlargements. Yes, I do realise I'm in the enlargements, and that might be shameless trying a form of bribery, but yeah, that's not going to work. I'm still going to critique you fairly. Reddit. The Reddit, of course, has pointed out the bow should be wide enough to cover the paddles. No. It doesn't have to be. I suppose, as an icebreaker one, you would expect it to be, but there again, the very fact of it forcing through is already pushing the stuff out the side. You can certainly make the case for it to be, but because of the way it's designed, it's probably okay. It's not the most efficient, well, not so efficient. It's not probably the safest design for going through heavy ice, but there again, you're also considering those are your manoeuvring, and you're sort of, in many ways there are more manoeuvring paddles on the side and your speed paddles the one behind you, and you can pull them up and drop them down to do maintenance, etc. So it's not a big thing. I mean, if you want to be a massive perfectionist, you could say it has to be, but then you're also missing the fact that when it's in the oceans, it's probably it probably gives them more maneuverability this way. So it's a case of, yes, in terms of ice-breaking capability, it's the less efficient, but in terms of oceanic survival and operations, it's probably more efficient. And considering you can maintain and repair them, I'm sorry, I know this one is completely going for it, but considering you can repair them in the book, and they have the repair facilities aboard, you can sort of get away with it. Hello, Machadoso. Hello, Tashu Vashal. It looks like it's from Dystopian Wars. It does look a bit like the Dystopian Wars one. I have to admit that. It does. It looked a bit like the Dystopian Wars. The cover art doesn't look like 8-inch guns. Is this the one about the 8-inch paddle steamer battleship? Yes! Do you have snow? We have snow. It's a light powder. It's a very light powder. Paddle wheel battleships, what a coincidence. Someone else was quicker buying the paddle wheel warship book than I was, so I missed out on that yesterday. Sad times. Just got back from walking the fluffy research system from melting stove. Mm-hmm. Biplanes have better loitering capability. It depends. They do as engines get better, but in the early engines, there is really no advantage to having a biplane, the monoplane. I mean, it's a case of the biplanes have better loiterability mainly because the engines like to sort of not do that well. So yes, they do. But it's a case of it is. There is fun on that one. Nice one. I thought OPEC could hurt the US over the Vietnam War, but something tells me that wouldn't work. Because who's defending OPEC from potential communist uprisings? Remember, OPEC has to walk the fine line between Russia as a member and there are a load of interesting societies involved in it which have real problems in terms of, especially in the 60s, 70s, that they kind of, you know, they're playing off the suicides against each other. They don't want to get involved in it. They don't want to be subject to either a CIA-sponsored coup or a KGB-sponsored coup. Now, are there actually cases of sister or would-be sister ships wanting revenge for their slain sisters or would-be sisters? Yeah, look, yes. There are certain ships which guard on vendettas. I covered this in my book. They're not exactly sisters of Hood, but they tend to escort her, and the tribals get very annoyed. Very annoyed that she was sunk. Max from, why is my message getting cut? I have no idea why. Hello, bug guy, it's just, you know. Don't mean it. I can't remember. With Skynet being British, it's more likely, more like it was going on strike. No, it's more like it was looked at the paperwork and went no. Could be Skynet checking on the content, but I doubt it is. I have to admit, I've got the recording is 1920 at 1080. I had to spend most of my day recording at the highest resolution that they do, 3840 by 2160 on this system on XSplit, because if I didn't, it caused trouble with the video which I'd done of actually aboard the ship. And I should mention that Dan, you're in the video. I couldn't cut your body out of it, so you're in it. As is Gareth. Alex let Glynn sell his book to us. I'm not sure. Is he able to? If he's not able to post a link, I'll post a link in the. I'll post a link to it. I will post a link to it in the bottom. How's that? I will post a link to it because I think it's a very cool book and it's an interesting one, and it's going to appeal to a lot of people. And I know people are looking for Christmas. They're looking for some fun reading books. And yeah. So I will put that in the description. Also, Glyn Stewart does have a very good website, by the way. I should add that as well. Orion Cruiser or Orion Slayer from an economic perspective? I'm not getting involved in that particular one of Starfleet battles. It's not a steamer. No. It's not a steamer so much, although let's see. Technically, I put steamer, but it should be even worse. Although, to be precise, not even diesel, really. Corn oil. A.K.A. BioDiesel. Oh, there you go. Right. So, icebreaker. Why is this cool? Well, there are several examples of it, and how realistic it is you can just judge for yourself. But there is one particular battle in here which I really enjoy. Now, this does actually to me sound pretty British Command. I suspect the Stelliforma magic, high magic, has subtler tricks than they've ever shared with us. Coral, she is the commander, the Rear Admiral. I have to hope that those tricks don't help them aim. Her chief of staff paled at that thought, and she smiled grimly. Now, it's interesting to note, there is a lot of discussion of magic in here. And I won't get into it too much, but it's not a magical sci-fi. It's not magic. When you read it, it's really interesting, and it's all built around, the idea that, you know, sufficiently powerful technology, when viewed by those who do not understand it, will be perceived as magic. Especially when it's wielded by those who don't understand it as well. And seriously, there are sections from this which, please note, I am fairly sure that are sort of inspired by a certain other franchise. They're not quite, and they're quite understandable as a methodology, but they are quite a big feature of another franchise. Although they don't produce books primarily, that franchise. She knew the ships were at least 16 kilometers distance because she couldn't see them yet. The lookouts' extra height gave them another 9 kilometers of sight. And make it 24 kilometers, lookout called down. They are cruising fast, moving up at 30 clicks. Coral turned to O'Connor. Your place is on the flag bridge, Colonel, she told him. So is yours. I need to see with my own eyes, O'Connor, Coral countered. I need to be here to command a squadron. You need to be inside Icebreaker's armour in case something happens to me. That wasn't an argument he'd been expecting, and he swallowed whatever he'd been about to say unspoken. Instead, he crisply saluted. Understood, sir. O'Connor stepped away, and Coral turned to the signals officer, waiting patiently for orders. Signals and blood speech to the squadron, she told the young woman. All ships will form declining echelon on Icebreaker, tankers farthest from the hostilities. She turned towards the horizon, looking for a sign of the ships she wouldn't see until they were much closer. Her squadron was only sailing at 20 clicks, which meant the Stelliform were overtaking about 10 kilometers an hour. It would still be almost an hour before she'd be able to see them from the flying deck. And her guns would be able to hit the Stelliformer well before then. And she had to assume the Stelliformer ships had the same 25-degree elevation as her ships on their main guns, which was, of course, why the flare codes existed. They would be visible well outside the range of even the 20-centimeter guns. Sir, Coral recognized Al-Ghazi's voice and footsteps and turned to look at the intelligence officer. The commander looked actively uncomfortable on the flying bridge, keeping her focus on the horizon rather than the 4-meter drop to the deck below. El-Ghazi, she greeted the officer. We have a little time. What do you need? I heard the reports, El-Ghazi said. We're being hunted? Potentially. At the very least, there appear to be 3 battleships coming up on us, and we're a long way from Stelliformer waters. Then the reports I managed to review yesterday may be more useful than I thought, the intelligence officer told her. A lot of information emerges from our intelligence network, Admiral, and my focus is on the past and on our current mission. But I did receive a summarized report from a spy who managed to observe a firing test for the Stelliformer's latest battleship turrets. Coral's initial impulse was to demand why she hadn't received that report. That struck her as the kind of information the Republic's flag officers needed to know. Except, of course, she knew how insular and conservative the Republic naval intelligence was. The Navy had been burned badly by relying on incorrect intelligence in the past. Intelligence tended to only give the line officers information that they had triple confirmed or that was immediately critical. If she survived to make the commission, that was something she was going to change. But for now, she understood how the service intelligence officers worked. She just hated it. Explain, Commander, she finally ordered. Our engineer's assessment is that they are using a heavier charge for their 20-centimeter guns, but their turrets can only elevate to 20 degrees. Estimated effective range is 20 clicks. Coral exhaled a sharp breath. Ours is 24, she murmured. They were already in their maximum range, though accuracy would suck at this distance. Yes, sir. This was new intel, flagged for distribution for officers likely to engage Stelliformer forces in the near future, El-Ghazi paused, which didn't include us until yesterday, so I hadn't prioritized those papers. How many secrets of the Republic and their enemies lurked unread in Al-Ghazi's files? Coral wondered. The intelligence officer had no support staff, and she brought entire cases of paper aboard with her, and received more in blue colour. Remind me to assign you some yeomen, Coral murmured. Ones with decent clearance. That's not a tradition, sir. No, it isn't, Coral agreed firmly. Thank you, Commander Al-Ghazi. I wish I was going to be able to use that information. Sir, 3 battleships to 2, the Admiral told her staff officer calmly. Likely 4 cruisers to 6, but the cruisers won't really matter. 6 20-centimeter turrets to 5. The odds aren't in our favour, and I don't want to be the officer who starts the war the Republic is trying to defuse. She continued, which I'm afraid means we can't fire the first shot. Leaving Al-Ghazi to suggest that, Coral turned to the signals officer. All ships to fire yellow flares, she ordered. Let's see if we can avoid a firefight. She looked forward back southward grimly. And then order all ships to battle stations, because whilst I'll try for peace, I'm not taking that bet. Now, that's a pretty cool analysis. And that's a pretty accurate one. Before we get into too much, Dan, really? There's asking, Warspite most definitely bore a grudge, yes. Night Sailor, welcome to the advantage of being the numero, the first amongst the first power. As Caesar said, it's better to be the first man in Rome than the second man in anywhere. Or rather, best be the first man anywhere else but the second man in Rome. Because the second man is always likely to get attacked by the first man, because he's the biggest threat. But the first person has pretty much unrivaled power. How much of what Pennsylvania did in World War II was Pennsylvania wanting revenge for Sister Arizona? Probably quite heavily amongst the crew and ship. There was probably a spirit going on. Agreed on Rodney, but also I think Renown would have been out for that. Might as well say, still aggression, still thinking of 4.7 DP. What do you think the impact would be on the Pacific Warrior and the Abdare Command if the British Australian ships were fitted this way? They'd certainly be more capable against air attacks. They'd be more useful in air attacks. But as said, in nicest way, you really can't get into that too much because what kind of force is there for Abdare is going to change things dramatically. Steve Clarke, Alex, in the difference engine, the Iron were using mechanical computers designed by Babbage to improve fire control. What do you think the limits were for this form of fire control? Well, considering that, honestly, mechanical computers for fire control were what fire control tables, etc., were pretty much. They carry on being used to the 60s, so they're fairly useful. And in fact, let's be honest, for the large guns, they're still being used a lot later than that because you can't really find anything better for the large guns unless you build something from scratch, and no one wants to put the money into that. Also, is there anything they'd want to do? Let's be honest, whilst Britain might be allied with America under those scenarios, you're talking about non-British Empire could force USA and USSR out of Vietnam. Vietnam will be absorbing a lot of American and a lot of Russian resources, which would mean they wouldn't have to deal with those resources elsewhere in the world. It's a cruel calculation. It's an evil calculation in some regards, but it's the calculation which some people are going to be thinking. Non-declining British Empire. Yeah. I see them as twin mounts for the 4.7 inch in the secondary rolls, because it makes sense to have the twin. Now, please note, Glenn's made a few choices on this book which are pretty darn cool. And this was originally just going to be one book, and then I was going to get on to other things from other people, but I am going to do this in a general session on Glenn's books, mainly because, and this is going to sound terrible, I spent so much of today recording other videos and sorting through other things. This was all that went through my brain in time, and I went, yeah, they'll all work. They're what I had already organised and worked out. I have been planning on more books. I've got one new book as well, which is non-sci-fi to do. Let's see. They are quite good ships, and this is one of the things I do like about Glyn, is he puts the effort into trying to think exactly how they be doing and timeline of things. It's not, we see enemy, we're engaging. It's, we see enemy, we've got about an hour. Again, this is a point which is sometimes difficult to get through. I know I'm not the biggest fan, to an extent, of the all-round firing. Sorry, this is the trouble with working on the phone, is I see comments elsewhere and I'm going, no. No, that doesn't work. So let's see, just quickly, before I go into stuff, let's just check this comment. Ay, caramba. I have responded, and I've responded to them, and what's this, what this person is? Let's find him. Yeah. No, I'll get into that in a second. I'll get into that another time. This is the trouble. Normally I'm doing comment response videos as well. And this is the one trouble with doing a Bruships, is that it does tempt to turn it into a bit of a comment response video as well. Because of the fact that I'm not doing comment response, because I'm doing so many normal videos over the Christmas period. But I'm not going to. But getting back to the icebreaker. Why I liked this book and some of the issues. One issue, and I will say this is a big issue. Speaking as a person who has read the whole book several times, there is a very big issue at the end. Because you see, at the end, we not only have an excerpt from Starship Mage, which is, yeah, I'm sorry Glenn, that's never going to be my style of science fiction. But, at the end, we have this line. And it's a killer, because you've been getting to know these characters throughout the book. Coral... sort of us. But speaking of things that come after, she continued, I need you to promise me something, Coral Amherst. This is from a scientist. Coral, who was with her at the end. Coral gave her a questioning look. I have spent weeks now sharing a room with... X. I'm not going to say the name. Said bluntly, when this is all over, the Chosen are going to throw a stupid huge party to celebrate the peace treaty. At that party, when the barriers to such things are no more, you will ask X to dance. Please. It's a good conversation starter, yes, Jack, right. But no, you could have at least ended on the dance. Could have ended on the dance, not the cliffhanger. This is why we do need a follow-up book. I know this might have been intended as a standalone individual, but no, it needs a follow-up, literally for that. Because that's infuriating for someone like me to read, who's a historian, who's used to be able to read on more and find out why. And what happens afterwards to them. I might not put in my own book, but I want to know why. I want to know what happens. It's terrible. It's evil. Now, what else is there in this book? There is a lot of discussion on some real strategy. There is a real discussion of the reality of control and influence on sea power. And there's a real discussion on the limitations on CPAT and the realities of things you're actually dealing with. One of the things I liked about it is that because of its setting, it's able to fuse a lot of old issues that are still issues, but they are less, well, sort of visible issues for warfare, with a lot of pertinent coming issues for warfare. In that, when I was first reading this book, and I got to read copies before publication because Glenn was basically going, do you think this is at all realistic, etc.? And I was going, yeah, it actually does work out. So I was helping out a friend in that regard. I was going through some conferences which are on the environmental wars. What wars are coming? When I say what wars are coming, I'm talking about the fact that if we have major environmental change, the likely impact and driver that's going to have on global populations and global issues. We're already seeing some elements of that going on. One of the things we do probably need to work out is desalinization, and doing that on a large enough scale and economically enough that we can actually do it. I do find it kind of strange that for some of the problems we have coming on in the world, we really do already have the solution. We're just not implementing it because of the cost. And you sit there and go, really? That sounds to me like the Treasury in the 1930s going, well, rather than starting to build sloops and corvette and destroyers at the same time, and doing a matched build of sloops and destroyers, if the Navy wants one, they have to cancel the other. And the Navy, of course, doesn't want to cancel the destroyers because they need the destroyers. And if they have to pick between destroyers and sloops, they're going to build destroyers. Because you need the destroyers to do all the destroyer stuff. They can also do most of the sloop stuff as well, in terms of the anti-submarine warfare. But the sloops are the force multipliers. So you basically, as we often see, lose out on production of Royal Fleet Auxiliary tankers and lose out on sloops because you have a choice. Buy cruisers or buy tankers. Buy sloops or buy destroyers. Which are you going to do? You're going to buy them. Now, I had to admit, just before the thing, I converted that to X because, in the nicest way, I'm not giving away some of the things, doing too many spoilers for Icebreaker. This is, again, reason why I'm being quite, to an extent, coy on some of the sections I'm picking from it. It's good. See, Clarke, in my agenda to the earlier question, the period of novel was pre-dreadnought ships, so how would this improve the fleet of 1890 to 1900 periods? They'd actually be able to use their long-range guns, and with that level of fire control, you'd probably see some sort of dreadnought version of vessel, dreadnought-style gun layout, if not dreadnought-style engine system, appear in the 1890s. Nice one. So British Empire would be better off letting the two sides kill each other. It's not a nice thing to say, but yeah. It's terrible for the people in Vietnam. It's terrible for everyone, but this is the problem. Your basic scenario is, how does Britain stop them? If Britain tries to stop, do they risk breaking their alliance with America? They probably don't want to do that, because it's kind of useful, and it means they only have one major threat to deal with. And do they want to start a war with Russia over it? No. So, if those are their two choices, their other choice is to let them use their resources there, and in return, the British get to have far more of a resource and far more of a say in what happens in the rest of the world, and the wider, and the Commonwealth. And that's the scenario under that system. You're probably going to end up picking that one. It's not nice, but it's what you probably choose. Because compared to the other options, it's better for Britain. Not that much, 9681. You have to remember, America imports they America actually has quite a lot of their own petroleum products, etc. They manage to supply themselves. Their next largest market for that they import that from is Canada. If America was going to invade any country over oil in the 1970s, or even today, if they were actually invading it for their own imports, it would be Canada. Sorry, those Canadian listeners, but that's true. You're the biggest exporter of oil, etc., to America. I think pre-World War gun combat could be annoying, since you could see a target long before you could shoot it. Yes and no. It's always a case of hurry up and do nothing. Armed conflict has always been that way. You can use that for... to be fair, Glyn, one of my cousins said the same thing. So no, Glinster took a lesson from Quentin Tarantino. What's in the briefcase case is your movie. It doesn't matter what I tell you, because what you can imagine is just as good. Hello, History Vanguard. It's raining in the Mississippi. Ah. Don't get me started on the US. Yeah, there are all sorts of interesting things about Malaya. Mark Hannes, according to Massey, Glasgow's Captain Luce had to control Sturdy to expedite. If he'd failed, what happens if Speed beats Sturdy to Port Stanley? Then Spey arrives off Port Stanley and gets shot at by a certain battleship, which is sitting in Port Stanley, going, "Hello, come into range of my guns," said the Spider to the Fly. In which case, probably Spey decides not to hang around, because in nicest way, he won't be able to fire back. He's not got the ability to see over the hill and fire at the target. He hasn't got the spotting systems that the battleship has in place. So if he can't fire over a hill to engage the target and the target can engage him, he's probably going to get out the way and head off to sea. In which case it becomes a ocean search of Sturdy coming in, filling up, and then going out after Spey and trying to guess where he's gone. Please don't give the Americans ideas. They've had ideas. That was the War of 1812. They've been planning on invading and liberating Canada from the cruel British monarchy for let's be honest, over 200 years. They haven't got round to it yet, in terms of actually succeeding. Not really. The UK and Commonwealth definitely gave window service to the peace settlement, but they tended to support it when America was supporting it. When America wasn't supporting it, they tend to be very, just vocal enough to sound keen. Not vocal enough to actually do any issues. And something, when was the last time the Royal Navy ship packed hardtack as a major part of their rations? Oof. Probably in the 1900s. I wouldn't be surprised that there is a debate as to whether AC recipes sort of change. So, yeah, I would say 1900s from memory, but I would not hold myself to that, as I would want to do a lot of digging to be sure of that one. But I would say also Massey is not Sturdy's biggest fan. Then, and the Americans now have surrounded as well, unlike Order 12 as well. They have north, Alaska, and west. Why have you? No, Alaska is also to the west. And Hawaii's... No. Alaska, sort of. But in the nicest way, invading Canada from Alaska, there is a road you can go along, but it's not one I'd want to advance along. It's kind of... Let's put it this way. You just hope and pray that none of the Canadians have any Finnish ancestry in them, because that's the sort of territory which would be terrifying. And you've already heard my description of what the Finnish War was like. For the Russians. Jack Ray, it might be superstitious, but invading Canada is a bad idea. 2 times enough. I don't want to go for 3 strikes. Yeah. Plus, you know, they have an actual army, as opposed to starting with random missions and developing real troops over the war. So does Canada have a proper army these days, and very well trained, and very nice. Never count the Canadian Armed Forces out. Remember, they're reinforced by Mounties, and those are definitely not people you want to be fighting in a forest against. But again, was that Plan Red for the US 1920s plan for invading Canada? I think Plan Red was the war against Britain, which did involve invading Canada. If the start of the Iran's anti-U-boat war in World War II had gone better than it did, how bad is it for the Germans? Well, let's put it this way. If the Germans had... If World War II had kicked off in September 1940 rather than September 1939, the Royal Navy would have had about an extra 60 or so escorts in service, including a fairly large chunk of the Flower class. So yeah, it's not the German submarine production. In the peacetime conditions between September 1939 and September 1940 would probably not have increased that much. The British production of anti-submarine escorts would have gone tremendously. No, we have not heard your description of the Finnish War for the Russians. That was part of Friday's video on the Soviets. And basically, I also pointed out, fighting the Finns invading Finland is the equivalent, if you're the Russians, of entering a horror movie, and you're not the person who survives to the end. You're one of the people who goes in with a gun looking like you're strong and everything. Then you realise you're alone, you're surrounded, you don't know where they're coming from, and just when you think you have them pinned is when you realise you're dead. It's not good. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there are various descriptions of going on what the Canadians would do. Yes, it will be... Let's put it this way. I have faith that it would turn out very, very annoying for everyone involved. And yes, Canadian geese as well. That's going to take out quite a large number of your fast jet fleet. Those things have no This is what I was at a discussion once with a Canadian Air Force officer who was basically going, yeah, we don't really do low-level flying in large chunks of Canada. I was going, that must be terrible for your training. He went, yeah, but it's better for our pilot survivability. Geese do not have any concept, any concept at all that a jet is coming. Actually, Michelle, so September 1940 is bad for Hitler. Was Hitler correct when he said he should have refused Munich and gone to war in 1938? Actually, no, because it's going to sound strange. 1938 would have been even worse because their submarine production was quite so low in 1938. I mean, the Royal Navy didn't have any of the designs started and were just had the designs and hadn't actually started ordering the ships. But yeah, it's not a good scenario. Anyway, it's not a good scenario. How come Hood's Strayer fire controls over Mark 5 aren't dated by 1941? Mainly because they wanted to update it with the new systems and the new fire controls. Remember, Hood had only had a very basic radar fitted, and the part of the refit plan was certainly better radar and better fire control. But no, I'm going to give you the description of this book because as I try and give, I've been told by this, I should give descriptions of books when I talk about them. To the north, the ice. To the south, the enemy. In the middle, her republic. Conor Amherst is the middle child of a wealthy family with fingers throughout the politics and laws of magical Dale Bloods and the republic they lead. Skill and connections alike have propelled us to the highest ranks of the republic's navies. I would say this is slightly wrong. I'd say skill, connections, and absolutely no concept that she is going to actually hurt herself. Speaking as someone who was reading the book and going, yep, I've met admirals like you. And I've read about admirals like you. And I am not sure, but I would say Coral Amherst would get on very well with Carton DeWitt. In fact, I think Coral Amherst and Carton DeWitt would have an interesting conversation along the lines of, so you did that, oh, I did this, oh, you did that, I did this. It would probably not be a good conversation for anyone who's their staff officer to be around listening to, as their blood pressure would probably end up going through the roof, and anyone who loves or cared for them would not want to listen to that conversation. But generally, that is the sort of feeling I get when reading Coral. Now, duty inexorably drags her into a mission to learn the fate of a long-lost magical city, once home to many of the people that Dale Bloods rule. Storms of dark magic drove the sea blood from their ancient city to the shores of the Republic, and those same storms now assail the Republic itself. An ancient threat rises beyond the ice of northern waters, and Coral Amherst will need every scrap of courage, honour, and magic she commands if she is to save the Republic. Now, this is all pretty darn cool. I would also add just a simple thing. But there is quite a lot in there which I have to admit I have spotted in sort of my life, and I like to see in these books in that there is a group within most armed forces. If you work with most armed forces esprit de corps, there is a section where, okay, I'm going to use a word which YouTube sometimes doesn't like. They're not racist. Please note that. No, their view on the world isn't of your race or anything like that. It's, are you our Navy, or are you our Army, or, well, actually, in British Army, it's usually, are you of our regiment? If you're of that regiment, you are a higher species. If you're not of that regiment, you are the sheep they protect. And that is very much a view you start to see in this book, and you see through Coral's eyes, in that there is a, If you belong to the same branch I do, the same service I do, wear the uniform, you are special. You are critical person. If you don't, then you are, well, yes, we look after you. And, yeah. It's interesting to sometimes try and explain that, but when you read it, you see it and go, ah, yeah. And then you think about it from your own perspective and go, yeah, I've seen that. Mankuch, in World War II, the Iron had a building pearls on battleships and carriers due to escorts being prioritized. If no pause, how much would BBC CV production be speeded up? Dramatically. But honestly, you didn't even need to pause the carriers. You needed to pause the battleships, probably, but not the carriers. You could make the fact is, the Admiralty itself was arguing against, sections of them were arguing against, and I honestly think if Henderson hadn't been ill when he was, and Fraser hadn't started to take up and take the time to warm up in post, he would, that if there had been a continuation of command, where if Henderson had managed to stay well longer and had managed to hand over command to Fraser, I doubt there would have been a pause of the carriers. There might have been a pause of the capital ships, mainly because Henderson was not a fan of the King George V's, and he would quite happily have paused them to replace them with the Lions or Vanguards, anything, because he wasn't really a fan of the 14-inch gun. But I think if he could have, he would have kept the carriers going, because carriers were a big part of the British counter-surface radar doctrine, the big anti-submarine warfare doctrine, of course, fleet air defence doctrine, and the British deterrence doctrine for how to monitor Japanese in the Far East. All these things carriers were critical for, and that's what he wanted them for, and those things don't change with war beginning, and you need them alongside the escorts. And there were enough people, even without Henderson, who were making that case strongly making that case, and strongly putting forward a case. But the thing is, with Henderson gone, you've lost the biggest voice at court who would have made that case. And the only one who probably could have sat around and gone, well, as Third Sea Lord, I know exactly what we can construct and construe, and First Lord, you're an idiot. What is the difference between the Admiralty fire control table and the Dreyer table? It's to an extent accuracy and factoring of data. It gives you slightly more data access points, is as I understand it. But honestly, that's something I'm going to be going into a lot more this year at some point. The problem would be the Quebecois. They will only accept surrenders in French. Yeah. Quebecois. My Hunter, sea churches comes Munich. You aren't stopping war, you're stopping the war we can win. Yeah. And if Germans started in 1938 in Czechoslovakia, they would suffer for that decision because have you seen the border mountains, or the forts in them, or the amount of artillery and tanks? And of course the fact that then, if you start in 1938, Poland can mobilise and do that way. Germany doesn't have access to all the factories and all the facilities in Czechoslovakia, which are critical to moving to them sort of being able to move forward. The French can move forward, and the German army is nowhere near what it is in 1939. So yeah, and no Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. I still do not understand the decision to go with a 14-inch in 1956 when there are 3 European powers or announced they are making 15-inch ships. Because we are showing political leadership, Dan. And because, honestly, some people actually did think we could get a 12-gun ship. And if you could get a 12, 14-gun ship versus, let's say, a 8, 15-inch gun ship, in terms of weight of fire, etc., you could understand the idea of that would be more powerful and would get more shells. So there is an argument for it, but it's when it's 10 14-inch gunships versus 8 15-inch guns or 9 15-inch guns. That's when things start to look a bit iffy. So, to stand defiant. This is another one of Glyn's books. Surprise, surprise. Yeah. It's basically, it's a torture Glyn day. But it's a good example because I know I've covered this before, I think, but this is one of my favourite books from the point of view of when I have students and I have people I'm trying to talk through strategy, and I'm trying to explain the difference between winning a battle versus not losing a battle. And sometimes you can't win, but you can avoid losing. And this is the trouble. This is the trouble, especially when I hear people from other professions coming into international relations and strategic studies and war, and they're going, but this. And the trouble is they come from a profession where there is an end goal. And you either achieve it or fail it. But it's and it can look very binary when you're talking about war. It's the amount of people who are discussing sort of nuclear weapons at the moment over Ukraine and these sort of things. That's not a sensible road for anyone to go down. Because if anyone does actually start releasing it, once you release that particular genie from a bottle, you can't put it back. And that's the thing. Okay, let's say you win, but you've now made yourself #1 pariah state in the world, and that's for everyone. Because you've now raised the odds, raised the bar, and you've suddenly made it key for everyone to get or have such weapons in order to prevent their use on them. That's not a genie anyone wants you letting out of the bottle. So the thing is, if you do that, okay, you might win. But you've now made everything else problematic, and you're also going to be dealing with a scenario that you might win, but you're going to win a wreck of a country that you've just wrecked, which you've got to support and deal with, and a load of people who are going to be part of your country who want you specifically, and all the people of you, to get revenge on you. That's not a good scenario. No one sensible goes there, but the trouble is wars aren't started by sensible people. So sometimes some seriously stupid things happen. So, to stand defiant is described as trapped between warlords. The choice is simple: capitulation or defiance. From the solar system itself, Imperator James Calvin Walkingstick prepares the remaining fleets of the Commonwealth for a desperate and brutal campaign to retake their borders and unify humanity once more. On the other side of the Commonwealth's succeeding star systems, Dictator Caleb Heraclos gathers his fleets to avenge their humiliation. To the mercenary animals of the Stellar League, it doesn't matter whether the worlds they conquer still kneel to terror. Caught in between these worlds, two worlds would-be conquerors are Admiral James Tecumseh and newborn Dakotan Confederacy. Now guardian to a nation, Tecumseh faces enemies on all sides. He's left with only one answer, true to his and his new nation's principles: fight. Well, if you're going to fight, you might as well fight well. And thankfully, he does. This is what I always find fun when I check my books, because I get multiple copies sent to me in the end from certain author. Sometimes when I search for it, I find notes are in one copy, not in the other copy, and not in the copy I picked up. Ah well. And this is it. Between the light speed lag and his conversation with Tecumseh, it had taken 15 minutes for Walkingstick to get his fleet moving after the Dakotans had arrived. Not that it made that much difference. The Dakota starfighters were moving ahead of their starships, but not with any great aggression. The rebel ships were accelerating at 200 gravities, and the starfighters were only up to 300. They were slowly opening distance between themselves and their motherships, but Walkingstick wasn't taking the bait. His own starfighters were temporarily burning up at 400 gravities, but their goal was only to open a small distance between themselves and his main fleet. They would accelerate for 10 minutes and then cut thrust, allowing the fleet to match velocity roughly a light second behind them. Without Q probes to warn them of incoming fire, that extra few 100,000 kilometers would save the capital ships from missiles, but he wasn't going to risk sending his starfighters forward. Walking Stick figured his fighters would win that duel, but he didn't need to risk it or take losses even victory would entail. Very few tactical problems were nails, but sometimes the best solution was to form up a giant hammer and beat the enemy senseless. Any surprises, he asked, projecting his voice across the flag bridge. He figured one of the dozens of analysts and junior officers would have said something if things were going amiss, but it never hurt to check in. Nothing so far, McGuinness told him. I'm not sure that Tekumish thinks is going to happen. 15 ships, half them obsolete trash against the prime of the TCN. He's, Walking Stick searched for the right words, bluffing isn't the right word. He is committed, and he will fight, but he's hoping that once we accept that he's going to fight, we'll assess losses and decide we can't afford them. We've run the numbers, his chief of staff said. We will take losses, heavy ones, if he's really willing to press all the way to lance range. Most or all of our fighters and probably 5 or 6 of the older ships, he nodded grimly. We can afford that better than we can afford to lose 12 star systems, he told her. Or 18, he reflected, glancing over at where Miss Hera stood. The spy was a silently ominous presence, quietly inserting themselves into the tactical feeds and drawing their own conclusions. Walking Stick trusted Miss Hera to interject if there was a real problem. They were running an entirely independent review of the analysis and the intelligence, presumably through their staff elsewhere on the battleship, rather than entirely in their own head, and a double check can make a difference. Status change, one analyst reported. Rebel fleet has activated a suite of jammers and decoys. We're losing long-range and data integrity. They're a long way out, McInnes said. What are they hiding? Potentially they're making sure we aren't sending ballistic mode missiles their way. Without Q probes, they just turned any extreme range targeting solution to terribleness. Except the expeditionary fleet didn't have enough spare missiles for him to launch that kind of attack, and Tekumish knew it. Walking Stick's former protege had been watching the entire battle for this system in real time, after all. Tekumish knew the expeditionary fleet had burned down their missile stocks, neutralizing the orbital mines. Walking Stick suspected the Commonwealth still had more missiles left than the rebels did after the battle at La Tastara, but he definitely didn't have the missiles to waste trying for a golden BB. Spread our sensor drones wider, Walking Stick ordered. Let's get a better view and see what's behind their little shield. To get that far out, we'll have to accept some light speed delays on the transmission from the drone, sir, McGuinness warned. We're still 97 million kilometers away from the rebels. We can afford 5 seconds extra delay on the sensor data. Spread the drones. Admiral Tekumish wants us to focus on his ships and not on what's behind him. I want to know why. Even sensor probes with 1,000 gravity's acceleration took time to travel 1,000,000+ kilometers. But Walking Stick could see the sensor data updating and expanding as they did. Its probes might not have the quantum entangled blocks that would give them instant data anymore, but they still had all their sensors, engines, and cell systems. It doesn't look like there's anything behind them, McGuinness finally told him. They've run up a number of decoys, and we can't distinguish between real and false targets in their main fleet at this point, but since we know there are 15 warships there, not 45, that's not going to do them any good. And we'd have spotted anyone new arriving. Walking Stick agreed. Cherkov flares aren't particularly subtle. Cherkov flares! 3 analysts had shouted at once. But only one continued the report. Model Cherkov flares at the original emergence point. Estimate 20+ starships. Well, that's unexpected, the chief of staff said slowly. Walking Stick strongly suspected her calm was shock, but she'd snap out of it quickly enough. Please, Admiral, he observed. We just noted that Admiral Tekumish is making solid use of his drones and his jammers. The likelihood that there's another 20-odd ex-Commonwealth starships floating around is low. If it was 5 more ships, I'd buy it, Miss Hera noted, the cyborg intelligence officer appearing without a noise before they spoke. I could see them having another 5 that are being positioned somewhere else. At Persephone, say, that got the warning at the same time as Tekumish got it in Meridian. They would have needed to get moving even faster than his main fleet did, Walking Stick said. There's nothing in either sector that's only 6 hours farther away than Meridian. Or perhaps Tekumish was not at Meridian, and we are only guessing, the spy said. But given the losses we have been told the Amandine suffered at the hands of the League, there is no way there are another 20 ships out there for Tekumish to have gathered. We have initial info on the ships. Emissions suggest a mix of 30 and 50 million cubic meter condotori cruisers. Walking Stick barely even registered on us as the word sank in. Condotori mercenaries. Surely he was at war with the League, same as us. Surely they wouldn't have. Pericolis hates us, Miss Hera noted. He might be willing to compromise with our rebels, but there are only about 45 true condotori mercenary ships left. Except there are 50 million cubic meter ex-condotori ships in the SLN. And the fact that there are over 40 true condotori warships left gives Pericolis cover for a lot of things, including poking his thumb in the Commonwealth eyes. Walking Stick could feel the tension in the entire bridge. 30 or 15 was a fight they would win. handily. The price might be higher than he feared, especially given Tekumish had Q probes and he didn't, but to see if would win. 30 against 35, though, that wasn't nearly as clear. Tekumish's fleet has adjusted acceleration to rendezvous with newcomers. The newcomers are now manoeuvring forward at 200 gravities. Walking Stick stood on the mental precipice, staring at the third fleet in the star system. I don't believe you, he whispered to his discerning. I won't be fooled. But if he was wrong? Have we detected any starfighters yet? He asked. There's enough jamming in both forces to make it hard to tell. If they're going to try and rendezvous their fighter forces, though, we'll see them soon enough. The range is too long for certainty, Mizra murmured through Walking Stick's implants. How close are you prepared to get? It might only be a handful of ships pretending to be more. It might be more ships pretending to offer a relatively even battle to lure you in. If they are Condottieri, it's more than likely 10 than 20. But if it's the League Navy, Pericles is unlikely to have joined someone else's war with only Condottieri cruisers. He would not risk challenge us without sending enough ships to be certain of a victory. And if it's just a deception, we could throw away our best chance to reclaim these two sectors, Walking Stick told the spies suddenly. Their conversation flashed between their implants, but he saw the man nod. Fighters detected around the new force. Confirm that, Walking Stick ordered as he turned to look at an analyst who'd spoken. Numbers are unclear, but we're looking at a minimum of 500 more starfighters. Glass is still revolving. Wait, no, Commander? We have confirmed. Xenophon-type starfighters, sir. Exact distribution of classes and whether there are bombers present is still uncertain. But we have resolved the lead element of 100 Xenophon starfighters. Walking Stick looked at display. That removed the most comfortable possibilities. Both the chance that there were no ships out there, and the chance that what he was seeing were just a handful of Dakotan ships. Assuming half of those starfighters are drones, he said mildly, that's a minimum of what, 3 modern Condottieri cruisers? 50s? Yes, sir. We just picked up a second wave of 500 fighters, sir. Walking Stick balanced on the mental precipice for 10 long more seconds, then sighed and closed his eyes. 1,000 starfighters calls for at least 10 modern League warships, he observed. Aloud. We might be able to win this battle, but it could cost us the Commonwealth. It could still be a bluff. There were definitely ships out there and definitely League starfighters out there, but that didn't mean it was a fleet of 20 capital ships of 1,000 starfighters. But there was definitely someone out there, and the line of whether Walking Stick could afford the losses had been thin enough against the 15 ships he'd known Tekumish had. You know the right answer, Mistra's voice said in his head. Do you have the morale courage to walk away? Can you do what you know James Tekumish would do? That's a low blow, he replied on the implant comms, but it drove the point home and he straightened his shoulders. Orders to all ships, the Imperator of the Commonwealth said firmly. Adjust course for optimal recovery of starfighters. Prepare for AS entrance. Our course is for Sol. The Commonwealth requires this fleet to survive, at any cost, even this one. Walking Stick doesn't persistently underestimate his opponents. Walking Stick persistently overestimates his ability to manage his opponents. Lance, this is the next book on my list to read. I'm currently doing the one before the series. You'll enjoy this one. You will enjoy this one. I know, Jane. You're not the only one who's waiting. And basically, Glyn doesn't talk to me as much anymore because I nag him every time when the next one of my various books are coming. I enjoyed them all. Nice turn. I've often seen it said that the N3 were never likely to be built given the post-World War I and pandemic world. Does that argument hold up? No. Basically, Britain will be building battleships if other people are building battleships, but there's a difference. Let's put it this way. The naval race you saw versus Germany became problematic and as aggressive as it was because it was, without doubt, a numbers race. And Germany kept billing it as such. A naval race you'd see in the 1920s between Britain, America, and Japan, especially about naval treaties, would be a technology race. There would be a competition to launch the biggest and best. And it wouldn't be a case of how many would be built, it would be the quality built. So you probably would get the 4G3s. You probably would get the 4N3s. I'm working on the series you hate right now. Then Cowboys, then back to Space Elves. Okay. Alright. We have enough Canadian watchers on this channel. We can track down Glyn and make sure he writes what we want him to write. Joking. We enjoy books, Glyn. Don't worry. We'll wait. It's probably better for my own productivity you don't produce too many books, because if you did produce all the books I liked all the time, then I'd always be reading them and I wouldn't be able to write and doing my own stuff. No, seriously, why were Hood and Ramleys the only ones to get the Dreyer Fire Control Table Mark V? It's when they were upgraded and when they were entered service, basically. I don't think... Mark, I can understand that one on the Honoverse, although I don't read the Honoverse. I don't think Glyn's ever going to get that problematic. I know no one who can keep up with your reading speed. You can try. 6 series, yeah. Doc 6. Stafford, unfortunately, I'm the same drive time to stick Glyn through it now as I'm flight time to you and Drac. Mr. Hood's weight issues meant she could not get all the 4-inch guns that she had. How did the RN get around it? Probably they fit her for, but not with. Or probably they start working out how they can lessen the weight from elsewhere. Yeah, but, you know. Ending series is never good. Or in the case of a certain one, we need a part 2. I don't care about a part 3, but we need a part 2. I don't care about the Quentin Tarantino that always lead wanting more. I want to know what happens to Coral in your mind, because I have my mind and I want to compare it to yours, mainly from personal interest perspective. Now, why is this particular battle so good for teaching people? Because it's the calculation. You can win a battle, you probably win the battle, but you don't know. It's the realistic fusion, and that's what it's so good about, is it's the realistic fusion of how you're putting intelligence together in terms of strategic intelligence, i.e. what information you know. You never have a complete picture. What information you know about what's going on wider, what information you know about what's going on the battlefield around you, which in this case spans an entire solar system, and what you know of the people you are facing, with also what are the realities of your own situation. For Walking Stick, the big problem is that when he's formed up a massive fleet, it's all he's got. He's got nothing else. And that's a problem for him. That is a real problem for him. And there is the fact there are other actors playing at this. There are other factors, other factions especially, other groups, the powers that they've just been at war with, who've just defeated and destroyed, basically, the Walking Sticks, you know, the Earth Empire, as I prefer to call them. They are playing around. They are around there. It's around. Currently watching the stream, writing a script on the S160s. Cool. Schedule is locked until January 24. In Drax's Hood refit video, where she doesn't blow up and after withdrawing, heading for Iceland. Asked on the Iceland subreddit, and from what I've been told, the people of Iceland would help the Hood's injured crew as best they could. Yep. The people of Iceland are pretty darn nice. They're not keen on the British for having invaded them, but there is also the fact that the Icelandic people sort of did understand where the British were coming from. And it's a case of, we don't like you for doing this, but we realise you're doing this because you're worried what the Germans are going to try next. And what we really don't want to avoid is the Germans sneaking out a merchant ship, landing some troops here, and then you actually having to do an amphibious assault and actually fighting a battle here. Because that's going to kill a lot of civilians. And that was the British. The British worry, people come up with different things for it. They go, the Germans were never going to do a massed amphibious assault on Iceland. They weren't. That was all the British were worried about. You didn't need to do a massed amphibious assault on Iceland. Iceland doesn't have that many population. You could get a reinforced battalion, a single merchant ship, sneak it through on a complete wing and a prayer, and take Iceland. And yes, that is the plan from Red Storm Rising. Yes, they reinforced then some more by air, but that's what you have the Fallschirmjäger for. I think that's how you pronounce the paratroopers. The Fallschirmjäger? I think so. But, this is the thing. That is what Iceland is, the worry for the British is with Iceland. And then Iceland becomes the unsinkable German aircraft carrier in the middle of the North Atlantic. Great fun for convoy times, until the British do an amphibious assault and take it back. It's high risk, but it's an absolute nightmare for the British to do it. So what would the British prefer? Iceland doesn't have an armed forces. Right then. Britain invades. And then eventually, very quickly, they hand it over to the Americans to secure it, and it's the American troops which are there to secure it. Because the British don't really want to conquer Iceland. That's not their plan. Their plan is they just up there under nightmares for British are the Germans actually competing the Graf Zeppelin and sending her out with a proper task force, because a carrier does increase the capabilities of that task force, even one as hilariously bad and inefficiently designed as the Graf Zeppelin. But that would lead to a full carrier battle in the North Atlantic, probably involving whichever carriers they can get together. Probably at certain points, probably Furious and Ark Royal would be the combined carrier task force hunting down Graf Zeppelin. Possibly by the time it enters service, considering when it enters service and it's getting closer, it would have entered service, etc., would have been after Victorious service. You could end up with a task group which is based on Victorious, Ark Royal, and Furious hunting it down. And any fast capital ship they can get to engage the task to engage it, and that's the scenario. But Iceland gets taken by the Germans. It's going to require a lot more commitment of British forces to take it back, and a lot more risk to the Icelandic people than it is if the British just take it themselves. And the British just going, right then, that's an outlandish possibility. But there again, we didn't think the Germans were going to be able to take Norway, let alone destroy and knock France out of the war. We're kind of a little paranoid at this point, which you can sort of understand. Doc, when I visited Extra Belfast, it seemed the fire control table was the only bit of the firing system that did not have a backup. Was this done in some way with written range angle tables? There usually was a backup. How do I put this? The backup was often you had multiple fire control tables, if you could, on a cruiser, etc. You'd have your primary fire control position and you have something else. But also there's the fact that if you take out the fire control position, that's usually in a fairly safe part of the hull, etc., if you go to a destroyer or something like that. And if you manage to take it out, well, then they've probably got worse problems. But also you might probably by that point are engaging at ranges at which they don't really need the fire control table to hit. It's a case of we point guns in the direction and we fire. So they come under local control. Fire control is used for long-range fire. Once you get close enough, it's local control. And occasionally officers are doing it in their head. HMS Exeter at one point has their aft gun being directed by the gunnery officer standing on top of the turret, shouting down instructions and working out where it lands, and then going, yeah, working out from that in their heads. So there are some interesting stories. Carlos said, one has to be careful when I start telling people. After all, they made the game EVE Online. I know. It's a good game. It is. I'm going to make sure I've got the next book queued up. He says, hopefully. Hopefully this queues up the next book. And right then, that one's done that. Yep, and yep. I'm trying to both get the book up and start my phone charging, because I've helpfully, as always, have managed to run out of managing to run out of power. It takes skill to be this disorganized. Right, done. Yes, standing on turret is firing, yes. That's for sure. The GIUK gap would have been impossible to police if it was under fallen. The U-boats wouldn't have needed to worry as much. No. Matchvangan, hypothetically, if German battleships landed in the Republic of Ireland in World War II, what would be the Irish and British reaction? Considering the large number of Irish people who had fought for the British against the Germans in World War One, that is not a bunch of veterans I would enjoy taking on. And the fact is, the Irish Armed Forces, while small, would not have been keen on German paratroopers landing there. It would have been a case of, yes, how many of you made it past, well, let's be honest, to try and get to Ireland, you either have to fly across the UK, which is going to be great from the paratrooper's survivability perspective in the case of British air defence, or you have to fly around the UK, which means you have to come out of France, fly very far into the Atlantic, then fly up the Atlantic, and then fly across. So you go out across the Bay of Biscay, probably on a slightly northwest heading, probably northwest by west sort of heading, and keep going in that direction, then turn north, then fly east. And where do you end up dropping the troops exactly? And also, what use are those troops going to be once you're in Ireland? What are you going to do? Are you going to reinforce them? No, they're going to be... You just end up with Ireland as an enemy. It's not really a good scenario under any circumstances. And that's really not good, because if the Irish suddenly become an enemy, then you suddenly have the problem that the British could well form... How do I put this? Very controlled barriers either end of the Irish Sea, which allowed them to form up convoys far more quickly. You also get access to all of Ireland for air basing and for convoy forming up. Yeah. And one of my favourite stories is Admiral Lee telling people that the tables were wrong and they should be this instead, and being right. Yeah, this is the other thing, the other backup for the gunnery fire control tables. You have some very, very well-trained gunnery officers who can do the stuff in their head. It's the classic thing I tell my students to be capable of working out when their computer is telling them the wrong thing. To do that, that means you have to know what you. This is why you have to know how to do it in real life and normally without the computer. If you don't know how to do something on the computer, you can't ever check if the computer's in the correct ballpark. And that's a problem. Think like there was Plan Kathleen between the IRA and Germany to take North Ireland. Yeah, that wasn't ever really a serious plan because the Irish government didn't want part of it, and the fact is, again, it would have been the IRA in that period would have found themselves in a lot of trouble siding with the Nazi Germany. Quite a lot of them realised that. Even a fair number of them realised in the Cold War it wasn't necessarily sensible to side with one of the powers. The thing is, the Irish Sea might not be how do I put this? It might not be as calm to form up as Halifax, but if you're forming up a steaming convoy, so it's going out, it's already under steam, all good, and you're bringing them together, you can have it going at have it built up and going at quite a pace by the time it leaves the Irish Sea, especially if it's a fairly secured area. Declan 12. What's the better design scheme for non-escalator clause battleships? US Scheme 16 for North Carolinas or British King George V's? Can I say neither? Honestly, can I say neither? Because I don't like the King George V's design. And honestly, North Carolina doesn't infuse me that much in its pre-escalator clause variant. That's right. Strange how in 2 days a Douglas DC-4 slams into a mountain due to a faulty heater, killing all on board. Next day a Canada-made DC-4 crashes due to a design flaw. That gives likeness naval history. It's rarer you have ships of same class sinking in a few days part of each other, and also the fact is there's usually the let's put it this way, the sea has more of a statement as to why it's sinking than the design. As long as it's designed to float, it's usually okay. Usually if you have one of the class isn't floating that well, then the rest of the class will be modified to make the deal with that. No shame. Same in chemistry. Had a set of tricky stuff I had my calculator do, and could from having made the program and used it that much, was rather good at estimating the answer, making it so I could tell if it was on point or if I made an input error. Well, the war convoys would have still had to make it to the UK. But the thing is, Ireland did have several harbours which have been very useful for staging escorts from, and staging especially the hunter-killer groups from, to go and support the convoys. So the hunter-killer groups could have been forward-based on the Irish coast. Under that scenario, because I'm fairly sure if Ireland had suddenly found itself invaded by German paratroopers, they would not have been happy. Especially as, knowing Hitler's usual bombast, he then immediately declared war on them. He's like that. He likes to declare war on people. And then we have Remnant Faction. Now this has a very fun battle in it. Yeah, it's Peacekeepers of Soul. And I would just say, do not type Remnant into Amazon, because some of the things that come up are really, really weird. I mean, really weird. Yeah. Some people are interesting souls. That's what we're going to go with, interesting souls. Jack Ray, don't trust the Java code on the computer. Gotta pull out the punch cards and check it old-fashioned like. I like tools such as IntelliJD and other JetBrains product to check my code. Yeah, checking code. I remember the days in my SET classes where I had to check code by by literally printing out and reading it. Because reading it on the screen with my dyslexia was not fun. Not with code. Okay. Alright. Ah, that makes sense. So, this book is the continuation of the Peacekeepers of Soul. It's book 5 of probably many, many books. I have a feeling it's going to go up to at least 9. I have that feeling. Mainly because Glyn tends to work in a freeze, and the longest he tends to go is 9 or 12. Thank you, Arcanelumia. Thank you. Yes, the Christmas bet is fun. Whatever that is. I would just admit, Archie Lumio is, how to put it? Not that misread it, fix it. Don't worry yet. This is the trouble. That we've had fun with some interesting interesting advertisement bots. So let's leave it to one side. But yes, I think at the beginning someone has been putting me on some various subreddits, and thank you. It's nice. The bet is the interesting one that's disturbing me at the moment. Ay, caramba. Families. Families. Right then, what was I looking for? I was looking for this, and this. And I'm looking for Remnant. Why have you decided to lose it? That's not fine. Now, there we go. Again, I found the wrong one, which has the position's in the wrong place. Okay. Mm-hmm. Right then, so let's go back to... Mm-hmm. Sorry, it lost a bit in the chapter. I'd say this is the trouble with sometimes with, and this is not the trouble with the books. This is the trouble with Amazon Kindle. I swear it sometimes loses when I place bookmarks. It loses them. The hour Desron 27 waited, watching the clash of titans in the main battle, as an apocalyptic bombardment hurtled towards them, was one of the hardest hours of Henry's life. It was a relief to have the gravity wells blaze to life and see the cataphracts leap into motion once more. The Khmeri missiles were still 200 million kilometers away from his ships, but since they were moving at almost 8% of light speed, and his ships were motionless relative to Andron, they needed time and space to get up to speed. They built the space while the Khmeri had built the base velocity for their salvos. Now they needed a time. The Vengeance fleet missiles were coming to them, and the careful balance of distance and acceleration that would put them on top of the weapons at the actual speed same speed had finally broken down. 2 hours, 45 minutes until we can launch our own missiles, Owen reported. And then what? Then we empty our magazines in counter-missile mode, Henry told her. That seemed self-evident to him. But there were a lot of missiles coming their way, and he was grimly aware of what their hit chances were in this mess. Once we match velocity, we hit them with defensive and offensive lasers. Sweep what we can with the shields. He continued. The missiles aren't active. We should be able to clear a lot of them by sweeping. Well, he was hoping the missiles weren't active. That said, let's keep an eye out for any missiles that still have fuel. I would have snuck some extras in hunter-killer mode to protect the swarm, especially since they could see us. Khmeri might well have assumed that 5 destroyers couldn't stop 15,000 missiles. Henry wasn't even sure they were wrong. He had 56 launchers and roughly 3,400 missiles across all 5 of his ships. After that, it was down to lasers and the gravity shields themselves. The only good news was that nothing else in space could match the acceleration of Desron 27. Was putting out at that moment. The defensive fortresses would have been engaging the missiles at a massive disadvantage, but even if the Khmeri had done something clever, Henry's ships would be tracking in at the best possible range and velocity to take the missiles down. He just wished he could figure out what clever tricks the Khmeri might have pulled. His margin was already disturbingly thin, and despite Vengeance fleet's near annihilation, the lives of Andron's citizenry still hung in the balance. The Khmeri stealth ships were Henry's last remaining complication. He had plenty of worries, but the only thing outside the relatively narrow scope of the ship's charge was the potential for the stealth raiders to do something dangerous. Fortunately, the escorts Rex had attached were on top of their job. When 12th Fleet's fighters went out to try to chase down the stragglers of the main Vengeance fleet, the stealth raiders tried to engage. But the turn to go after the fighters brought them into range of the blocking squadron of escorts. There were 30 Khmeri raiders against 20 allied escorts, but the raiders were a third of the escort's size, relying on surprise and single-shot launchers to take down their targets. They never stood a chance, and Henry swallowed relief as he was able to narrow his focus onto the task at hand. The 5 cataphracts blazed towards Andron at full acceleration, and the Khmeri missiles blazed towards them, all too rapidly catching up. Only distance made the entire affair seem slow. Henry's ships were gaining over 100 kilometers per second of velocity every minute, and the missiles were already moving at over 7% light speed, but the Khmeri had launched the missiles over 20 light minutes from the planet. All ships report on missiles rearmed with conventional warheads, Aaron told him. All penetrator and kinetic warheads are stored. We've got roughly 70% conversion warheads and 30% nukes on every ship. Given enough time, Henry knew that his engineering crews could convert any of the non-directional 500 megaton nukes into the directional conversion warheads. But that was a matter of days, not hours. Contact in 2 hours, Chemistry reported. Nothing to do but wait until their missiles catch up, Henry noted. Somehow I don't think anyone is going to go take a nap. He silently pinged Quaid, instructing the steward to make sure coffee and something calorie-dense was delivered to the bridge, and to the rest of the battle stations. If there was ever a time to break out the donut stash, it was then. Last stand of the tin can sailors again, I see, America murmured in his network. I can only hope it goes as well for us as it did for Sprague. Henry had to think for a moment to place his captain's reference, but only a moment, and didn't even need to look up this in his network except for details. Sprague had more ships than we do, and had carriers, he reminded America, and he was covering said carriers, and the troop transports, no civilians. The Battle of Samar was something the UPSF made sure all its officers covered, and destroyer officers tended to be told to refresh themselves on when they came aboard. The portion of Leyte Gulf and the entirety of the Battles Atlantic in the World Wars were considered essential to understanding the role of destroyer. It is the first and final duty of any warship to put herself between the innocent and the enemy, intoned. No one is going to back down, sir. We're going to save Andron. Whatever it takes, Henry agreed grimly. Whatever it takes. They were still a long way from the planet, if distance, if not necessarily in time, when the oncoming missile storm entered Desron 27's range. Fire! Henry knew the order was unnecessary, but now everyone on all 5 ships knew the plan, knew the potential price they might be asked to pay, knew at least some of the price. Sorry, not sure what happened was. Knew at least some of the price that had been paid to take down the Vengeance fleet. The shield wall of UPS destroyers had probably saved tens of thousands of lives, but the protector's large technical cruisers had needed clear lines of fire to engage the Chimera superdreadnoughts. Half of the big Andron ships were gone. So were 15 of the 12 fleet's destroyers that have forged the shield wall, and dozens of the Allies' lighter units, along with Erin, Puma, and the Kozan cruiser Endericha. But for all that price that had been paid, the 12th Fleet and her allies remained an effective fighting force. And like the main fleet of Leyte Gulf that Merck had referenced, they were horrendously out of position to defend against the incoming Chimera missile strike. First salvos away when reported. All launches cycling. 56 of their own missiles blaze into space. Paladin's wrecked 4 launches could have been fixed in 12th Fleet's mobile dry dock if they'd had time, but they hadn't. Another salvo launched half a minute later. Every minute, 112 missiles hurtled into space. 9 of the Catrafax salvos would be in space before the first intercepted the incoming Chimera missiles, and Henry watched the icons with predatory eyes. He didn't have enough missiles to clear the swarm, even if every one of his weapons took out a Chimera weapon. He could hope for multiple kills, but the odds said that his average would be less than a kill per missile. And about now would be when any clever tricks to eventually to set up triggered. Jammers activating throughout the swarm. Anyone barked. Anyone estimate at least a dozen. Our missiles are losing lock. Desron 27's missiles hadn't actually travelled particularly far. They were catching up to the Chimera weapon's velocity and letting ballistic course do most of the work. The problem was that Desron 27 had travelled over 1 million kilometres in that time period, and their missiles were almost 2 light seconds away. And a 4-second command and control loop left no chance to salvage the first salvo's targeting. Unclear how many we got, sir. Our main beams can't hit them at this range. We don't have solid enough targeting solutions, and it looks like they've set a sequence of jammer warheads. One set of a dozen or so is going off about every 30 seconds, just as each of our missile salvos goes in. We're getting some, but not as many as we were expecting. Let alone hoping, Henry knew. And the enemy jammers were making it harder to tell how many they'd taken down. Worse, even after the jammers had triggered, they couldn't ignore the missiles carrying them. They knew the Chimera jammer missiles weren't carrying salted nukes, but at 7% of light speed, they were still going to hit with an incredible force. Desron 27 needed to vaporize, shred, or deflect every missile in the salvo. Range is 250,000, Inerka snapped in the bridge. Let's get those firing solutions in, people. We don't have long. And for all the mind-boggling velocity with which the battle was approaching Andron, Paladin and sisters were barely 10 minutes from matching the Chimera vessel's velocity at point-blank range, and only 20 minutes from those missiles reaching Andron. The Catrafax were on a crash course for the planet themselves, but they had the maneuverability to dodge a planet at the last moment, and they needed to be on the incoming missile's course. Main lasers engage, then reported as white lines drew themselves on the display. Between their jammers and our nukes, it's getting hard to pinpoint anything out there, sir. Closer we get, the easier it be, Henry said grimly, watching the rippling kaleidoscope of radiation in which the death of a world lurked. If they'd taken out 5% of the enemy weapons yet, he'd be shocked. They needed to do better, but Henry also knew that chemistry couldn't be done with tricks yet. There'd be at least one more counter, one more trick to keep anyone from saving planet. Defensive lasers engaging. His operations officer told him, our targeting data still sucks and we're starting to run out of missiles and lose launchers. The Cataphracts had enough munitions aboard for 30 minutes of sustained fire. The expectation was that those missiles would be expended over multiple engagements rather than spent in one single continuous rapid-fire engagement. The launchers weren't designed to fire every 30 seconds for 30 minutes. That's a design flaw. And aboard Paladin, especially where this wasn't the first time Henry had asked them to do it, the price was obvious. A third launcher just failed on Paladin. We're down 7 across the squadron. Range is 100,000 kilometers. They are losing at least one launcher every salvo now, but they still had 20,000 left and no time. We think we've taken out about 3,000 enemy missiles so far, Owen reported. She paused, then physically turned to meet Henry's gaze. I'm not sure this is working, sir. This part was never going to be enough, he told her levelly. We always knew what it was going to take. All ships should have courses prepared to sweep the swarm with their shields. The flag deck was silent for a few minutes when then she swallowed hard. We need to make sure all those courses have vectors that will miss the planet if they lose engine power, sir. The last thing they needed was to successfully clear a missile swarm and then drop a 1,000,000-ton destroyer into the planet at 7% of light speed. That was in the brief, yes, Henry agreed. The range continued to drop, and he watched his destroyers slowly shift their formation, spreading out to form a sweep pattern that would take them back and forth through the chemistry salvos until there was nothing left. We'll match velocity in to penetrate the lead salvo in 3 minutes, Aaron said. The jammer density is dropping. They've triggered at least 1,000 of them, but I think our success is taking down their missiles is starting to reduce their jammer numbers as well. It has to, Henry murmured, but we're down to the wire. As Captain Urquhart said, it's time to stand between the innocent and the enemy. And if we couldn't take the joke, we shouldn't have put on the uniform. Exactly. There was another moment of quiet, then Chan cleared their throat. Sir, it's not an option most of us have, but you should call the ambassador, the comms officer told him. Henry sighed. Should have called is probably more accurate, Commander Chan, he admitted. All I could say now is goodbye, and she'd yell at me for making assumptions. No, Ambassador Tvorich knew what she was signing up for. She understands the job and what it takes. He couldn't be distracted now. He was waiting for what he hoped would be a final shoe, and it would be sometime in the next 2 minutes. After that, the only thing left would be to throw their hulls and shields in front of Armageddon. It's a very good book. Are we now discussing who has a spanner? Not 8,000 subscribers left to get. 800 left to get, I think. Now, let me just check. Yes, 802 left to get. In 14 days. Well, no, in 13 days. So, I am doubtful I'm going to achieve this in time, but I'm hoping. Make sure lots of moles feeling active, feeling suppressed. Take care, Amelia. Nancy Tap, hello. I've just started playing D&D Spelljammer. We were on the verge of our first epic naval space battle, but unfortunately our captain rolled a natural 1 and we flew straight into an asteroid. A 1,000,000-ton flight as a destroyer. Flight 6 Arleigh definitely something interesting. Have you ever played Cold Waters? I think I have, but let me just check. Because I think if it's what I think it is, yes. If you're talking about the Cold Waters video game, yes, I have. Apparently, I have played it for exactly 7 hours. So, give or take what you... I'm not quite sure. I'm sure I must have played it for more than 7 hours. Pardon me. Sorry again. This is what happens. Every Thursday and Sunday, a certain person cooks lunch and... yeah. I should probably take some more of my, yeah. I love it, Illy. It was roast chicken. Make sure, are there audio versions of your books? All of them, yes. YouTube's algorithm are too good these days. I don't bother to sub to half the channels I watch because I know the algorithm will put new videos in my recommendation. I can understand that. Honestly, I can, but actually, if I do this. So can I find the detail? Yeah, there are. You're going to have a fun time because I'm going to do some. I'm going to share a portion of my screen. And so I don't confuse the screen completely, I'm going to do that. I think it's desktop 2. Yeah, that's desktop 2. Which has the chat. And if I expand it out, you can see that you have stats going for subscribed, not subscribed. And 70% of my viewers are subscribed, which is pretty good, I think. But, you know, then you sort of scroll up to this sort of detail and you go, way! I'm doing this, and returning viewers. This is the sort of, these viewers are the cool thing. Sort of the new viewers are, of course, what I sort of need to do to grow my channel in terms of winning the bet for my mum with my aunt. And yeah, basically, for some reason, the YouTube Shorts are the best for getting new viewers. Not sure why. Don't get me started on that. The Sun stats. Yeah. 0.5% of my viewership is apparently female. And you sit there and go, really? I can... There are certain things I can see it in, but I know exactly how many of my cousins watch my channel, and just in this way doing the basic mathematics of that on the numbers watching, yeah. Say that's more than 0.5%. Hi, Frank Spasato. Glenn Stewart, have you written a bad book? I'm not going to discuss this one for Glenn. I will let him answer this one. But I will say there are certainly books which are not to my taste. You know, and I think, you know, he could drop those series and just concentrate on the series I like. Colin Cameron, that I like that idea. It probably would have been better than what I had. Ooh, the unpublished book. Probably, Glenn. That probably would be it, yes. In the nicest way, if my 0.5% was Admiral Coral, I'm fairly sure if she likes the channel, then YouTube would be getting invaded. And explained things too. Let's see. Well, no, and I have another book as well that we wanted to go through today. Yes, this is a new book. It's not really sci-fi, but it's called Tank Commander by Stuart Crawford. It's been sort of sent to me. I've had it this week. And it's pretty darn cool. It's basically, as it says, from the Cold War to the Gulf and beyond. And I immediately went through and going, what are the chapters going to be? And they're all just numbered chapters. They're not titled chapters. I have to admit, that's the one part on which for me I went, really? We're just numbering chapters? When I joined the 4th Royal Tank Regiment in 1980, it was very firmly Scottish and called it Scotland's own. I think we may have had the highest proportion of Scots soldiers in any of the Scottish regiments at the time, including the traditional infantry battalions of the Scottish Division. But I have no means of proving that claim. The Association of Scotland had developed gradually over the regiment's history. An important milestone had been the establishment of its pipes and drums, against general establishment disapproval and resistance by Lieutenant Colonel Laurie New in the mid-1970s. Be that as it may, we recruited exclusively in Scotland by the time I joined, although a few from the other parts of the UK and Commonwealth managed to sneak in. To use a football analogy, getting posted to 4th Royal Tank Regiment was like being transferred to Real Madrid. Everybody who was anybody wanted to be part of it. We weren't at all like our sister regiments 1, 2, 3, and 3 Royal Tank Regiment, whom we regard as nice enough but a bit pedestrian, although 1st Royal Tank Regiment had an outstanding CO in Lieutenant Colonel Mark Godson, but he was exported to them from the 4th Royal Tank Regiment to sort them out. Again, I've discussed this already today. Our senior retired general, who had all 4 Royal Tank Regiments in his command at one point or another, recently observed, one senior retired general who had all 4 Royal Tank Regiments in his command at one point or another, recently observed that 4th Royal Tank Regiment was a Scottish regiment that just happened to share a cat badge with 3 others. And I think that's a fair summary of the situation. We didn't actually dislike the other Royal Tank Regiments, we just didn't seem to have very much in common with them. They were very fine regiments in their own right and had marvellous officers and soldiers. The fact that we felt we were different was hardly their fault. More the fault, perhaps, of Royal HQ, Regimental Headquarters, Royal Tank Regiment. That said, we always did feel that we were regarded as the black sheep of the family. In many ways, we probably had more in common with the cavalry, although you'd have to ask them about that as well. We called them donkey wallopers and didn't really meet up with them in the field much, but there were friendships established in the various courses we attended together, which last up today. In Munster, the 17th and 21st Lancers were just down the road, and they were much toing and froing between the officers' messes at the time. They were a nice bunch, and we had many friends there. I also got to know 1 or 2 officers from the Life Guards and the Blues and Royals, and from the other cavalry regiments, and they always seemed pretty sound to me. Heaven forbid, but 4th Royal Tank Regiment even ran the Tidworth horse trials one year. Our predecessors must have been turning in their graves, which was actually great fun. We did have a special affinity to the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards, much as we might refer to them as the Scotland's other armoured regiment, when we wanted to irritate them. Their infamous officers' long-range destruction group was before my time, but its exploits during the visits to our mess in Munster are stuff of legend. During the 1991 Gulf War, we supplied them with a handful of subalterns and other ranks who saw action with them during the Ground War, all of whom were most complimentary about their wartime comrades when they returned. I knew a few of their officers fairly well, as did others. We were therefore hugely disappointed when we learned that during the rationalisation of the Royal Armoured Corps that followed the 1991 Gulf War, the Royal Tank hierarchy spurned an approach from them suggesting that they might amalgamate with us, as seemed eminently sensible, as we shared exactly the same recruiting area. That new regiment would have been a force to be reckoned with, and what a pipe band it would have had. Sadly, as previously noted, 4th and 1st Royal Tank Regiments amalgamated in 1993 to form a new 1st Royal Tank Regiment, and the Fighting 4th disappeared from the British Army's order of battle for good, much to everyone's regret. It's an interesting book. If you want to read about a tank commander, you want to have this sort of a narrative approach, it's very good. And it's a very good history in terms of a personal history. It's got pictures in. Grandfather. Has chieftains in it, which I like. As we all know, I'm a big fan of the chieftain. I know others aren't, but I like the chieftain. Mainly because it was the first vehicle I ever learned to drive on that was a proper vehicle. I do not consider the Lego car to be a proper vehicle. Although it was my first driving license. And, yeah. him later in life, the author. Stuart Crawford's personal memoir traces a military career of 20 years in the 4th Royal Tank Regiment, Scotland's own. The narrative records experience between joining his regiment as a young troop leader in West Germany, for his eventual resignation of his commission to stand for part of Scottish Parliament when it was reinstated in 1999. Between times, he attended 2 staff colleges, served under the UN banner in Cyprus, was a staff officer in the HQ British Forces Middle East during the First Gulf War, and undertook a research fellowship at Glasgow University, investigating and reporting on race relations within the British Army. Although regarded in some circles as an iconoclast and maverick, he was destined for higher things when he took the decision to leave the army. Written in a humorous and occasional whimsical style, there are also many instances of criticism of army practices and discussion on the morality of war. As a keen amateur photographer of the time, the book is illustrated mainly by the author's own photographs, many of which have not been published previously. It's good. Interesting discussion of common purpose at the back. Thank you for the super chat, by the way, Bichon. I'm not sure if I said it earlier. Nah, she'd just have a family member talk to a university and find you a proper job. I wouldn't mind a proper history lecturing post. As long as I could keep doing this stuff and keep writing books and had time to do them all, I'd be happy. Because I wouldn't want to lose the channel. Take care, Glenn. I don't know, really 0.5% female as well. I mean, we all sort of, all start sort of female as embryos, then sort of, some of us have a Y chromosome lead to a few changes response to hormones. Basically, males are... I always love having a medical doctor on the chat. It really does add context to things, if you're not careful. Jack Ray got the bot very quickly. Right then. So, as Glenn's gone, and yeah. Questions, chat, for about another, let's say, hour. Then I'll get back to sorting out the joyous thing that is tomorrow's video on HMCS Sackville and the Flower class. Which is going to be a fun video. It is going to be a fun video. It's already a long video. I should give you all that sort of as a heads up. It should really give you that as a heads up. It's currently, and he says checking this, so if anything happens to the screen, you know why, because I'll just press the button. It's currently... It hasn't had all the bits added back in that I'm going to add into it, and it's already an hour and 46 minutes long. It's also going to have at the end of it some various hilarious outtakes, as I've concerned them. So, yes. There's about another 40 minutes I'm going to add into it. It's going to be roughly 2 hours and a bit long when it's finished.
Could you please explain the usage of cruiser-type vessels in sci-fi? I've seen many games use wild names for cruiser types. What do you think is their understanding for doing so? Basically, there is the trouble is historically cruisers could do pretty much anything and were adapted to anything because the cruiser was as much a description of a role, i.e. the cruising role, as it was of a size of ship, which was basically your largest non-capital ship escort and surface vessel. So this means to a certain mind which is looking for just filling in a gap, they can just call it a cruiser. And it works. There is a certain multiplayer game called Dreadnought that has vessels called Artillery Cruiser and Tactical Cruiser. Fun times. History Vanguard, you'd be a good history lecturer at Plymouth Uni. That is one of the places I would like to go and teach at. I would like to go and... Mainly because I like the people at Plymouth University. I do like so the people down there I could work with. But no. Haven't seen a role advertised for that moment. Currently, I have to say on job application front, the job application I've put in for most recently was a fellowship at Cambridge. Just because it's something fun to do. And also because Harry Bennett is probably one of the few naval historians who could really give me a run for my money on quality of beard. And so I'd like to work with him. He was also one of my examiners for my PhD. So, yeah. Max, consuming there was a magical loophole in the first and second treaties to allow for crazy drug fuel design to actually work, such as self-escorting monitor. What would you choose and how would it look? Self-escorting monitor, what would I want to do? Would it be self-escorting monitor? What would it be? Let's see. Crazy drug fuel thing that's a loophole that people can use. If they classified it as all the capital ships as being limitations as dreadnought-style ships, and therefore pre-dreadnought style ships were still left open, and you could build those, it would be kind of interesting to see what a 30,000-ton pre-dreadnought, 30,000 plus pre-dreadnought style ship would look like, and how they would get around the loopholes. It would be a case of, so you mean we can build something which has 2 turrets, one either end, or 2 turrets, theoretically could be forward, and yeah, it's not allowed to be dreadnought, so it has to have a whole mixture of armament. Okay. Be interesting to see how that would develop. It would probably get pretty big and pretty complicated, but fun. Nice one. With the alternative timeline I've been working on, the British don't decline. The US has no reason to send troops to Europe because the British have it covered. Does that make sense? The Americans would still send troops to Europe. They would still be part of Germany. They'd still have troops in Europe because that would be part of the thing, and that would be necessary because you see, the British would see it as a way of unifying Anglo-American against the third power. Interesting enough, that's why the Americans wanted French and British troops in Germany as well, to unify the 3 major powers to Europe instead of taking it, to try and unify the foreign policy by unifying their military commitments. And Megastrike, what would you choose in Outlook? Oh, well, honestly, if I've got no limitations because it's not a dreadnought-style battleship, and I'm only allowed 4 guns, then I probably go for 18-inch guns. And then I can make my secondaries Because I can make the point that it's not a mono uniform armament if I'm allowed pre-dreadnoughts, as long as they're not dreadnought style. I can make my secondary 16-inch guns. Admittedly, they're wing turrets, which I absolutely despise, but they could be 16-inch guns. So I could go sort of Lord Nelson and have broadsides of 4 18-inch and 4 16-inch guns. You can have my teaching job. Wouldn't I want to take it off anyone? The calling Aaron, a bit off topic. Have you got Windows 11 yet, and has it affected your software? Yes, I have got Windows 11. I think I've got Windows 11 running on this machine. And has it affected my software? Not particularly. It seems to be all running out. It all had to update and all had to be sorted out for it, but it seems to be okay. I do have to get a new camera sorted out. The only reason I put it off is because random things keep coming up. And it's like, in the nicest way, I ordered it and the patrol group to go with that. And please note, I did cheat. I ordered... This is the fun thing. I am changing, of course, to the Wolves. I like the Space Wolves. They are fun. However... If I go to my basket, because I'm now sorted out and put it in my basket, there is a troll. If I get the Space Wolves Combat Patrol, it comes with, and I kid you not, I'll probably still get it, but I'm not really a fan of it. It's got one of the things which I'm not really a fan of. In that it has an Invictor tactical war suit, which I almost don't find that particularly useful. I don't find the tactical war suit to be what I would consider necessarily a sensible system, especially not in a system which you have tanks. I can understand why they have it, and it does look cool. It's just not really tends to be my style, especially not one of them. If I'm going to deploy tactical war suits, I would want at least a good squadron of them deployed together. And I'd probably want them deployed alongside my... Well, definitely alongside my dreadnoughts. So I'd have the war suits and the dreadnoughts deployed together. I don't... If I'm got a combat patrol, that's not what I'm sending out with the combat patrol. So what I've actually was doing was buying the Space Wolf upgrades and the basic Space Marines Combat Patrol, because that comes with a armoured vehicle, which is fine, and I can make use of that, because that comes with Primaris Impulsor, which works fine by me, and I can make use of that, and I can do all that, use that sort of thing. Primaris Lieutenant Phobos armor, some infiltrators, some suppressors, eliminators, and I can adapt those to my various needs. And I can with the systems. I'll probably I have to end up getting both, because my plan is to basically use that, have enough things I can test out on new ones, my painting that I'm going to do and get it really refined for my army before I change my Templars over to the new Iron Walls, which is probably still what I'm going with. Michael, why do you need a new camera? Because this camera is starting to have a panic attack with some of the things. It's basically, I've started doing some recording in ultra high definition, and the reason I'm doing the recording in ultra high definition is because it doesn't cost me much more to do it, but it does generate me a lot more income from, for some reason, YouTube advertising. I was reading the stats and went, oh yeah, if you're doing guaranteed in high definition, it can be that. And I was thinking, well, next year I'm planning on going to Glasgow, I'm planning to go to Newcastle, I'm planning to go to Liverpool, I'm planning to go to Australia, I'm planning to go... Yeah, anything I can do which is going to upgrade the income is sensible. And I was planning on upgrading the camera anyway. Because, if you haven't noticed, every time I laugh,
this camera usually starts to shake. And yeah, so I'm trying to make myself giggle. I have a way of making myself giggle. I shouldn't. And it makes it shake. Whereas there is a camera which is available which won't shake when I'm giggling, and I won't have to change my setup that much. So that's more successful. Shooting bots in World of Warships co-op while shooting bots on Steam Chat. Fun times. Enjoy. Hello, Melanie. Going on. Cambridge. You're slowly working your way north. I like Cambridge. Have you, Battlestar Galactica, yes, Battlestar Galactica, yes, I have got that game. I know, because we ended up having to doing it and using it for, there is one of the bilge pumps videos which are on the channel. We are doing some more bilge pump specials. Any using bilge pumps 13? The bilge pumps 113 is ready to go. It's just not been loaded up yet because it's our Christmas special, because we all have family commitments over Christmas. So it's going to go up this week, so it sort of covers the Christmas bit. Just think, Sword of the Force Z hot tub historian video. I thought Deadlock would be a video. Deadlock would be the game. I'm not sure. No. Perhaps I'm going wrong. About going out to fight, I thought of Cunningham's lament on building ships and traditions. Yeah. Am I being blocked? I doubt it. So it's all done, but it's coming. And a new camera has been ordered. Like, it's going to sound strange, the Combat Patrol has been ordered now 3 times. And Amazon keeps coming back and go, we're cancelling your order, because it turns out we don't actually have them left in stock. And it's a case of, I hate you. You are annoying me. So that's why this one's here. And I haven't, it's, you don't send a tank in just on its own. And also this might explain why my Warhammer army expands in forces, because it tends to be what I would consider a tactically sensible battle group. Not necessarily what they would consider a combat patrol. So if it waits on long enough and ends up waiting paychecks, it'll be a gladiator tank, a Space Marine combat patrol, a new dreadnought, because I can never have enough of those. I like my dreadnoughts. And a Wolves combat patrol. Plus, of course, the thing is to turn the Primaris Marines into Space Wolves. Which will be enough troops to seriously dent anyone on a good day, but it's going to be basically an amendment to my current army. Which might explain to you why I don't play that regularly and usually only play with friends, because actually having a table big enough I can deploy my army on is a fun time. Imagine an old history where Fisher builds HMS Dreadnought with single 16-inch turrets. Fisher wouldn't do that with single 16-inch turrets. But there is a very potential history that he builds it with twin 14s. Single 16-inch turrets don't give you the volume of fire necessary to do the long-range fire that he wants Dreadnought to do. But the 14-inch gun, which
Ellswick's Ordnance Company kept trying to supply for British dreadnoughts, pre-dreadnoughts, and the various yards didn't take up on them. If they had taken up the 14-inch guns for the Lord Nelsons, then Dreadnought herself would have been fitted with 14-inch guns, and that would have scared the bejesus out of most people. This is the thing, when you pick up one of your glasses and you expect you're going to take iron brewing and you suddenly get a mouthful of milk and you go, that tastes weird. Oh, that's milk. How do you get Normandies and Lions for the French Navy? The Italians don't join the naval treaty. What camera am I looking at? It's an Osbot one. It's a tiny PTZ. It's a good one. But I have, as I said, I have got the money. I have kept trying to buy it. It's kept not coming. It's a cool one. It's a good camera system. I've got a friend who's got it because, let's put it this way, I was looking at it and then I had a friend who got it and I went, why do you have this camera system? And he went, because my... Let's put it this way, there is a reason his significant other, his partner, would now like to talk to her parents far more often at the moment, especially her mum, and they live in another country. So when he came home to find that his partner, who's in this current circumstance, was very upset that she wasn't getting good quality, etc. and basically went on Amazon and ordered the highest rating of everything, hooked it up, and has now got the television and this really, really good camera. All these things set up so that she can FaceTime with her family using it and is happy. And this makes him happy, because it means he's less likely to come home to someone who is very, very upset. And so he got it, and I just went, that's good, that's very good, and that does this and this. Yes, it does. Played around with it on the road and went, when I get an upgrade, that's what I'm getting. Frank, sorry, let's see. In the Battlestar Galactica, there is a heavy gunship and heavy cruiser. Without playing game, how might you imagine how these ships differ in the role? Gunship is bigger. Battlestar BSG Deadlock. I have played it. Yeah, I do play BSG Deadlock. I have it. This is the joy of the thing. I have BSG Deadlock. I play it disturbingly regularly. I have got about 1,400 hours on that. That's probably a little bit too much. I should probably cut down on that one a little bit. But honestly, the gunship is lovely, but I prefer the cruiser because I think it's more flexible. But there again, I have been known to deploy fleets which are entirely Battlestar. Which I know you really shouldn't, because they're really not designed. It's supposed to be task group, and I realise I'm always the one going on about task group, etc. But it's a computer game, and if I deploy this entirely Battlestar, and let me just check. Oh, by the way, the light which is showing up on the thing behind me is not someone targeting me with anything. It's my mouse. I have a cool mouse. So don't worry, that's not a targeting shot or anything, that's just the mouse. That's for sure. Twin 14-inch Dreadnought would have been a really interesting old history. The Koreas with 16-inch or something like the King George V or one. Yeah, probably would have. Let's be honest, if you're starting off on 14-inch, then your jump up next one is either 15-inch or 17.5. Jump up to next one Well, are you going to jump to 15-inch or are you going to jump to 16-inch for the next generation? Because remember, if Dreadnought starts on 14-inch, Orions are, of course, the super Dreadnoughts, which jump up to 13.5. What do they jump up to? Do they jump up to 15.5-inch? Do you want to make a 15-inch? You probably go with 16-inch. And in which case, what do the Queen Elizabeths go up to? They either have to go up to 16. Queen Elizabeth and Queen Elizabeth go up to. They either have to go up to 17-inch, 17. Well, they either have to go up to 18-inch, or they have to go to treble 16s. It's an interesting scenario that it causes. And the reason, by the way, before anyone thinks I have a large such a large Warhammer army because I am egotistical or anything like that. No. It's because, and this is one of the things that happens in my family, is we do have some people who have very big rooms. We have people who own farms in our family who have a whole barn converted with a table, and we have whole family tournaments, and occasionally it is me versus all my cousins. So, in the nicest way, I need an army to match about 4 or 5 other armies. Okay? It's a necessity. It's free for all, and I'm on my own and surrounded with a very large army. No worries, Stafford. Very kind of you to send anything. Just think, my whole force exists out of 1 Black Creech squad and 1 Primaris. Still a good force. Stafford Thompson, what was that rule? Yeah. Don't. I'm carefully not to use that phrase. That's a touchy subject at the moment, and when it's resolved, it's resolved. Magnus, the US Congress loses its collective, and the US starts building 14-inch. Just basically, if the Dreadnought starts off on 14-inch, that's going to cause people issues. Fun issues, but issues. I bet the 1960s Middle East would be better if the 6-Day War does not happen. It would be a lot better if it didn't happen, but for it not to happen, you'd have to work it out. Oh, I'll type out the camera. Let me just stick it up. It's a really cool system. I'll put the camera in the description below. And I'll add in an Amazon link if anyone's interested, because it's it's something which I have looked into, and as I said, I've had that friend who's the first one to have it, and I've got, I think, about 2 friends who have them now as well, other friends. And it's a case of, ooh, it works really well, and it does all the things you need it to do, and it does it all automatically, which means it's upset person, or also known as idiot proof. I'm hoping my present for Christmas present for Jamie reaches him. How do you do all this? What do you mean? How do I do all this? Please note, before anyone starts, again, I have 2 rules which I tell people never to do. Never be like me and be a functioning insomniac. It's really not a fun life to do. You have a lot of time on your hands. And 2, more important thing is, I am a workaholic. I really am. And whilst universities have a habit of forgetting to pay you in this country for a bit, when they do eventually pay you, you get paid quite a lot. And so occasionally I always divide some of the money off to treat money, because otherwise I would save it all, because I'm half Scottish, half Cornish, and my upbringing is to save all the money. So I have no one else to spend the money on other than my family and myself. Most of it gets spent. Most of the fun money gets spent on the family, but some gets spent on myself, which gets spent on my model railways, my computer games, and Warhammer, and books. I've seen videos where players use tactics, stacking their ships like a wall in space and dominate all before them. Do you ever do this? I have done it. I find it very difficult to maneuver, and really, for operators, I do. I tend to not do. I tend to operate them in in freeze, so they form a sort of formation which can be mutually supporting in their freeze. I know Jamie does the stacking, but I do the sort of freeze, and I will have free off there and free off there and free off there, and do a sort of maneuver around and lots of strike fighters. Plus, I use the smaller the smaller sort of battle stars as the escorts for the larger battle stars, really. So I set one of them to the basically defensive role, and the other one backs up the battle, provides another set of strike elements to the larger battle star. The comments, oh, family taunts. That explains things for a degree. Yeah. And also, we have certain rules about. Let's put it this way: the size some of the size limitations of armies, etc., that you sometimes have in tournaments are not really applied in our family scenario. And also, a lot of the reason there is a lot of home-built stuff, i.e., kit-bashed, self-created systems, which are interesting. As sure, my guardsmen had 2 Berserks, more than a handful of Layman Russes, and a Baneblade. Cool! Sorry to hear that, Jack. So you're saying you could use some of the Inquisitors and Grey Knights to back up? No, I can't use your Inquisitors and Grey Knights, because one of my aunts, that's her army, is entirely Inquisitors, Grey Knights. And what else does she have in there? Oh, she now has the Sonaris, the Sisters. She has the Sisters of Battle as well. So her formation is Grey Knights, Sisters of Battle, and Inquisitors. And so yeah, we all try and keep our, especially the older ones, tend to make sure our formations, which is why I'm changing from Templars, because one of my cousins has now decided to go Templars and has gone completely Black Templars, which is what I was. So I'm now changing my army to Wolves from Templars. But I'm going to give them some of the specialist troops I have from Templars are being given as part of the Christmas present to that cousin. Hi, Anuk. I'm late. Got caught up in a rare World War II TV Sunday show. Oh, cool. What were they doing this time? Nothing is idiot-proof, no. Very cool, Jack Rowe. Aaron, is it a show of unity really that important to us? Even though in the mid to late 1960s they would hate it for the atrocities they were doing, they would be hated for the atrocities. Yes. The US was obsessed with it. Was always a case. It was especially a case in the McCarthy era of It's Us or Them. You know, the amount of paranoia going on that led to the rise of Senator McCarthy, etc. I had family over there at the time, and who came back to the UK, and it was really not good. My money is spent half savings, I was a bit of money, and I was a bit of money on normal things, and a bit of money for treats for me, normally on a girlfriend, or the moment of my holiday to see the Polish steam engines. Polish steam engines are good. You will enjoy those. Nice hearing. What happens if the Israeli air attack on the USS Liberty misses? Life is a lot easier. Richards, I'm not getting into the all chords, but let me put points. But my point is, they are neither side's doing that great at the moment. It's gone into a bit of a stalemate period, and honestly, it's expected. You expect it to, because both sides are now the Russians are in the stage of training up their troops, because they've got a lot of conscripts, but that's not help because they're not trained and they're not equipped, and they're having to train them up and get them equipment and get them all the stuff they need. And why do I have a wedding photo come up from the 11th of December? I don't know. When was that from? And sorry, it's just on the whole looking back at your memories from the 11th of December, some point in the past. Oh, I remember that wedding. Now, and the Ukrainians are at the extent of their logistics after having done the big push. So neither side is going to be moving, and both sides are going to be making dramatic claims for what they're achieving, and it's going to be entirely propaganda. We'll see what happens in probably... Well, I get into this more in Belgium, so I'll leave that for there. My good. So your family treats size limitations the same way everyone treated Washington Treaty limits. Very truly, because let's put it this way. One of my relatives, I will leave her nameless. The aunt in question knows which one she is. Likes to field an army which includes 4 Imperator-class Titans. That she has built. I'm fairly certain there was never an army which was deployed, even in the books, which had 4 Imperator-class Titans. And I've heard that, well, that perhaps there might well be an Emperor Titan joining them this year. So, you know, we'll see. And if I've got to take on an army which has 4 Imperator-class Titans and possibly an Emperor-class Titan joining it, I'm going to need a lot of tanks, okay? A lot of tanks. It's a heavy armor approach. I have aircraft, I have tanks, I have full combined arms. I'm not going to detail them too much because then she will know what's coming and she will plan around it. You'll have no idea of the firepower my army has to face. No. Oh, no, seriously, no. The general discussions about the Sisters of Battle, no. Maybe 1 or 2 more will end up with Sisters of Battle, but I doubt the rest will. There are issues with them as far as they're concerned. They don't like their range of weaponry, and they don't like some of their systems. What was the Vimble thing? Oh, that was another Ozbot. Ozbot. And that's my Digi. Yep. The DJI camera, which I have to admit I am using the footage of for, and it's caused me some fun, and computer camera, portable camera. And this is the one I think yeah, both of us have it. Both me and Drac have this one. Mainly because Drac recommended it to me and I went and got it and he already had it. Frank, what good are the small battle stars, and do you bother assault stars? Small battle stars are good for escorting the larger battle stars. Mark Harkness on BSG once came across a guy who used the computer modeling and found that the OBSG fleet at Scimitar was not only bigger than Glenn Larson said, but at least 4 other battle stars escape. That would make sense. I have to ask, in that case, any of your commanders going to be named Stark? Battering, what was the dance on that one? Martin Henry, the Chieftain was often the most comfortable pillbox, I'm told. I was lucky enough to serve on Planet 1. The Chieftain, when it worked and was well maintained, was absolutely excellent and had great road clearance. Really good obstacle clearance. You could go over all sorts of things. But yeah, clangers were... challenges. Clangers definitely fitted. I've heard less polite descriptions of them. The free hobbies my girlfriend share, me and my girlfriend share, is photography, Warhammer, and going on hospital holidays. One thing she hates is me correcting tour guides when they get things wrong in history. Yeah, I had an well, actually, no. To be honest, me and my ex would do that together sometimes, but we'll leave that to one side. Or we just take ourselves off. The standard thing I do now when I walk into a tour guide tries to take over is I go, I don't mean this in a rude way. I'm sure you're very kind and very good, but you have got to deal with all these people. You don't want to have to deal with me as well, because I'm a PhD in history. I will be asking questions which will completely derail you for them. So... do you mind if I wander round, and then if I have any questions, I'll sidle up when you finish with them, and I'll ask you then. And usually tour guides have no qualms with me doing that. And most of the museums don't mind me doing that. If they're approaching, trying to group everyone together, I explain stuff. Look, the questions I'm going to ask are going to be really, really weird compared to this lot. And it will sound like I am showing off if I'm asking of a group, which is not my intention at all. I don't want to be seen to be putting you on the spot. I prefer to have a discussion after it's over. So do you mind if I just wander around on my own? And they let me wander off. Nice to know. How's it easier if the Israeli jets miss the US Liberty? A mistake where you can. It's easy to claim mistake when you miss because, well, you missed, and so who really wants to cause trouble over something which was didn't actually hit anything? There's certainly an argument for that in the Mediterranean Bay of Biscay, but I would say that the Caribbean was also interesting, especially in the the 1600s. 1580s and 1600s. Make sure, money for me is rather tight. Recently moved and not all paperwork is on. Down for instance now, so yeah. I understand that. This is one of the strange things, because I get all this stuff, but I do have the scenario of various employers have in the past forgotten to pay me. In fact, one of the interesting things is since I've been on Patreon and had this YouTube channel going, it's been almost more reliable than some of the universities. Yeah, that is a lot of. That's a walking city. That is a lot of. And that's just one part of her army. Okay, please note that's just one part of her army. She didn't want to leave them alone, so they are surrounded by several knights. let's say. And then a few Imperial regiments as well, just for the joy of it. And she's got a full Adeptus Mechanicus formation if she wants it. I have 7 Titans. It's stupid. I didn't even know it was legal to own one. Is your aunt that much older than you? This is one of my aunts who is... Let's put it this way. About... the aunts are spread over roughly about a decade and a half, although of course they're all 21. So all my aunts, as far as I know, are 21. Okay? My mother and sister are both 21. This is despite my sister having been born before me, and me having now managed to achieve an age in the middle of my 30s, 35. Yet my my sister and my mother are both 21. So I can guess how old my aunt is, but that doesn't mean that since she's retired, she's going to stop. In fact, most of my aunts and most of my cousins and most of my little cousins have very interesting hobbies. That's right. The Dog's family sounds a bit like Kirk and the Sunny from Police Gunner. Instead of boxing each other, they use Warhammer armies. No, we also do boxing. And shooting competitions. Don't challenge my mum. Okay? Don't. Really don't. She is very good. Although she, with her knee and hips issue at the moment, she can't really lie down. But she's still like she used to. But she'd still be blooming good if she wanted to. Well, if she could. No, I could be a 447 too. What's the earliest the Channel Tunnel could be built, and how would it impact World War II and World War I? It would probably get blown up in World War II. In World War I, it would have made supplies going to Western Front dramatically easier. World War II, it would have been the withdrawal point, and basically the army would have withdrawn back on it. How much earlier could have got built? Probably the Victorian age. Brunel could have probably built it. It would have been difficult, it would have been costly, and there would have been lives lost, and he probably built it wide gauge, because that's what he wanted, but yeah. Ron, I feel like Warhammer could be more divisive than Monopoly at family gatherings. We normally have both playing. Very cool, Just Funk. Senegal, yes, I'm somehow the favourite who found needs fire target. What can I say? It just happens. Richard, did you read Judge Dredd? Yes, years ago. Do you also get into Mech Warrior? It's World War 1 in space with mechs. Not at the moment. Arizona. My issue with Battlestars was they couldn't decide what they wanted to be. It would be Battleship Carrier or with the Space Surface Assault Ship tour. The trouble is that's actually probably the reality of what ships are going to be, especially the larger ones. Everything's going to be that on a sort of scale, probably in space, because once you're building a ship in space, that's what do you need when you turn up? You need it to be able to do everything. It's one of the reasons why I talked about the Daedalus class so much and like them so much. No, it was a mistake. We fired a torpedo at the ship carrying the president, and it missed. Yes, it was a mistake. We didn't mean to torpedo a ship carrying the president. Right, for this week, expert Warspite, but a Daedalus class. Okay, if Warspite was a deadless class, there wouldn't be anything left existing in terms of the German fleet. History man, once in a family Warhammer game, my brother did Eurofighter Strike. I normally go and wander by myself in museums. For some reason, I've got a friendly face, and the docents tend to try, and especially they tend to try and gather me in, and I have to not going, no, no, please. You don't want me. You don't. I might look friendly, but I'm not friendly. I will ask questions. So anyway, I really want a video game where I'm a Royal Naval and can make a lot of money with prizes in Napoleonic Wars. I tend to fund my entire navy in Total War Total War Empire by capturing and selling the enemy. That's a tough one, Night Sector, and probably they still do, but there might be more interesting issues. It is interesting, Anik. And listen, Alex understands age. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jack Ray. First time all 5 hit. Lack of timestamps makes me wonder what I've missed besides the icebreaker discussion. I will add in the timestamps later. Very cool, 1960-40. Yeah. I guess that's what you meant, Ruhan, that you're putting Warspite's machine spirit into a late flight deadless hull. The fact is that if Deadless Hull had been called HMS Warspite, then I think at a certain point it would have been a new the Earth, the Tauri would be dealing the fact that a new god had taken over the solar system, and that god was called Warspite, and everyone would be looking for exactly who the Gwald were now worshipping, let alone their Jafar soldiers, until they realised, hang on. Where's Warspite gone? She was supposed to be back here like 2 days ago. She's been out a week. We've been sent a request to go visit the new god at this coordinates. Go there. Get a message crew going. Hello, yeah. We're no longer in control of the ship. Yeah, we're not. She's in control. And apparently the Gwald are all going to declare peace. Why? She's their new god. I am Warspite. I appreciate the fact you aren't hard on both sides. They are doing a good job, but they do not. Let's put it this way. I really like them. I have great respect for what they do, and they are great at encouraging people to get involved in history. The trouble is, someone who's got a PhD in history turning up, who like me, does all the reading of a place before I go there, is a frigging nightmare as someone to get to in the group. Because if I ask questions, I'm going to start sounding like I'm trying to show you up, because I'm going to ask a really specific question, because that's what I'm going to be interested in. And it's going to turn one of two ways. It's either going to end up with them thinking that I'm trying to make fun of them, or them spending the whole time talking to me and not talking to the rest of the group, and that just seems wrong. So I don't. I have 6 aunts. They do a range of hobbies. Yeah, my family are we have a collection of hobbies. Thanks, do you ever play the Cylons? If so, how so? I occasionally play the Cylons, and I don't really like them. They don't really suit my style of combat. So Thompson, okay, what if the UK joined? Well, as said, it ends up as the god. That basically you do not give a ship that you do not give something Daedalus that power the name Warspite. Frank, you mentioned the fast battleship to the battlecruiser spectrum, but how do you define your cruiser to destroyer spectrum?
That gets more interesting, and that will be a whole video. I think they all have to learn from each other, Razorback. I really do. If you put Michael, if you put H1 Warspite into an Andromeda hull, what would the ship hologram look like? Let's put it this way. I have a feeling Warspite would turn up as some sort of Teutonic knight.
I'd worry about Warspite taking the replicators. Time for a So, Soxia Procel, nothing. What was the protocol for navigation lights to see during World War II on merchant naval ships? Technically, you're supposed to use them at certain points, but other points the ships would be blacked out and wouldn't even have navigation lights. In convoys, they were supposed to have them, and they did try and keep them running because they helped them avoid each other, but they were really, really dim. Now look, you could be like Drac, who was setting up to record a bit on Constitution and end up lecturing the regular tourists for an hour because they thought he was a part of the tour. I would like to say that's never happened, but it has on Warrior, Victory, and going around Mary Rose. So yes, I'm very careful now when I go around. I try and be polite. Right, I'm going to say thank you very much to everyone for watching. I'm going to go at sort of roughly 10 o'clock because I have to finish off this Flower Class video for you all to enjoy tomorrow. It's going to be roughly 2.5 hours long. So it'll be a nice long recorded video for you. I haven't done this longer one in a while, but it's a really good one, I'm hoping. Let's see, in Battleship, what can Heavy Cruiser actually do for your battle group? Take a lot of damage, but that's about it.
Veshivanga, my Warhammer game style is frontal assault. It normally works with Titans. It will do. I'm sure, okay. I wonder if some of your female sisters are caber tossing as your family holiday, as a holiday, a hobby. I wouldn't be surprised knowing my current female relatives. Raparazek, the Sea Systems Commonwealth and Nichian Prides both build comparable AI-driven warships named Warspite. What is the outcome? The Warspites end up ruling. Or they duel to death. Eventually smashing into each other. Take care, Steve Clarke. Thank you, Raparazek. Thank you, Alistair Shaw. Thank you, John Shea. Thank you, DG40. Thank you, Raparazek. Thank you, History Vanguard. Metroids. The big problem is, regardless of which hull you put Warspite in, what in the devil are you going to tell it when it asks, where are my triangles? Here they are! Here are your escorts, go! Take care, Seneca. Thank you, Melanie6040. Thank you, Constantrazos. Ruin. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much for the adminning. Thank you very much, everyone, for doing for the support. It's very kind of you. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the super thanks. Thank you for all the donations and everything that's going on. Thank you very much, and hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed it. See you on Thursday. That'll be the next live. Take care, on. I have been banned from museums for correcting mistakes in them. Yes, I have been. That I'm allowed back in them now. They just send someone to follow me and take notes. Take care, Vision. Take care, Nook. And thank you. Oh, nice to go your front. Why would the US do an embargo when their allies stop communism from getting a foothold in the Caribbean? Probably they wouldn't do an embargo, but they might be. They might not do an actual blockade, but they might do some form of embargo. But it's going to be more difficult because it would just go across Atlantic and back. Thank you, Skiffy. Thank you. What do you think of wargaming as an auxiliary for research? Which games do you use? I really like the Amity Trilogy. I use lots of them. Depends on what I'm looking to actually look into and work out. Sometimes I'm using Harpoon, sometimes I'm doing all sorts of things. Take care, everyone. Thank you very much, Mega Scrow, Calvin Gasberg, Frank Sparso, Night Scourge 1. Thank you, Bijon, Just Funk.
Thank you much, Dussel, and thank you, Stafford Thompson. Thank you, Baron Newman, and Richards. Thank you, and Jalen. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Have fun.